of Africa and near what are called the Cape Verde Islands. Now I want to take a look at the satellite picture in Africa and show you what's going on here. And you see these clusters of storms. It's pretty amazing, but sometimes tropical storms and hurricanes that affect the U.S. start as clusters of thunderstorms in the middle of Africa. Isn't that incredible? They roll across here in Central Africa, and then they come off the coast, and they develop into these little waves. And in fact, we have seen that in the last 72 hours here. A few little waves coming off. There's one right in there, another one coming off now very close to the Cape Verde Islands. So there are actually 3 features that are in the eastern Atlantic and that we're watching. Here's one actually more towards the central part of the Atlantic, another one behind that, and another one that has just come off the coast. So there are a few areas that we need to watch, and the computer models are actually picking up on these and developing them. We'll see what happens. Right now it's very early in the game and they're a long, long way off. What you're looking at here is visible satellite imagery of the Caribbean and the Gulf. We continue to see a hostile environment because of that trough in the east, generally windier conditions, so nothing developing here. And then as we take a look finally at
tonight, because a new wave has sprung up on us, and this one in the western Caribbean Sea. Here is Florida. We have to go south in this area of clouds and rain. That's the very latest disturbance. The good news here, it is too close to land for development, but it'll take with it a lot of rainfall across Central America. Now, that duo that you guys were talking about out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the very first one close to the Cape Verde Islands, a couple of 100 miles to the south and west, that one too is looking better tonight. But the one that could become a depression first will be this one right here, and it is over 800 miles east of the Lesser Antilles. Now, the National Hurricane Center says that the one by the Lesser Antilles is better than a 50% chance of becoming a depression, while the one by the Cape Verde Islands has anywhere between a 20 to a 50% chance of it becoming our next depression. Now, let me show you something interesting. If that one by the Lesser Antilles develops, these are some of the tracks that it could take. High pressure to the north, trade winds to the south. It looks like it'll move north and west and basically be around Puerto Rico within the next 3 to 5 days. I'm showing you this just so you can get a heads up in case this is called as our next depression. Now, what can we expect locally here over the next couple of days?
Well, are scheduled to go out Tuesday and have a look here, see if they can find a circulation center. And looks like this one could be a depression at this point, but we will know for sure once the hurricane hunters get out there and are able to investigate. You have things like the QuickScat microwave technology that can give you estimates of what's going on here, but the hurricane hunters, you get the exact information, and that's what we'll wait on. Thunderstorms building up on the north side, and there's difluent air aloft, and that's something that you look for if you are looking for any kind of development. Low pressure center right in here. The second one is behind it. There's a large envelope with the monsoon trough that actually extends a little farther over to the east, right over toward Africa, and you can see this unsettled weather right here. Cape Verde Islands right here, and you have Cape Verde, Africa. We're in what is called the Cape Verde season. Usually August 15th is the day, but close enough, mid-August, right in through usually the 3rd week of September, sometimes a little longer. That's when you'll get these long-track tropical cyclones developing off the coast of Africa and heading westward. But yeah, we need to watch that one closely. That first disturbance there may in a couple days be very close, possibly a little north of the Leeward Islands. Then beyond that, we'll have to wait and see. It is just too early to see what the forecast models are doing since that low pressure center at the surface not quite well defined yet. So all interests over across the islands, the Bahamas, need to follow this closely.
This one to worry about. Then we have this one here. This one could also be a tropical depression in the next couple of days. Let's get you closer, though, here to the Antilles as this area of low pressure is working to the west. Now, the southern Antilles probably doing okay. This is tracking off towards the west-northwest. Now, later on, it may encounter some drier air in an upper-level trough, which tropical systems don't like. But if it get past that, then we need to be concerned, maybe the Bahamas, even into the U.S. So we'll watch this closely. It's about a day and a half away from the Antilles right now. The convection's definitely flaring up around this area. That's why they're going to go out today and take a look at this one. So we'll keep you up to date on that. Otherwise, enjoy the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico. It's pretty quiet. We had that big flare-up of storms here in the southern Caribbean. That really fizzled. So nothing to worry about at this point.
More time for the tropical update, and Samantha Moore standing by with the extended version of the tropics. We first want to let you know that hurricane hunters have been investigating a disturbance in the Atlanta. Our own meteorologist Nicole Mitchell, she was on that flight. In case you haven't heard, she is a captain with the Air Force Reserves and a hurricane hunter. Let's fly you into the area, that suspect area here, way out into the Atlantic, just east of the Antilles. That area of clouds you see there, the thunderstorms with that. They've been crossing this, zigzagging over it, and looking to see if we are finding a tropical depression organizing. Flight level wind, north-northeast at 17 miles an hour, a peak gust at 17. So not really finding anything too impressive here, and at this point, not finding a tropical depression. However, just one spot they will continue to monitor along with us here, and Samantha Moore has more on your tropical update.
That's right, Betty, and we do have the next one on the list in the Atlantic Basin is coming up. It's going to be all the way to the F. So we made it through Edward, and that was the last named storm. We're waiting for the next one to be born, and if we have one, it will be called Fay. And this time of year, this is the area in which we look across the Atlantic Basin as well as into the Gulf and off the Atlantic seaboard. And over the past 122 years, we have had 83 storms. So it is a pretty active time where we look for development. Let's go ahead and take a look at the satellite pictures, show you the latest on these two lows we've been watching. Here's the one that's approaching the Lesser Antilles. That's number one, we'll call it for lack of a better name, since it is not named. And the second one, number two, south of the Cape Verde Islands. And it looks like it's going to be taking a more northerly track. But number one could be affecting weather in the Caribbean, in the Bahamas, as we head into the next few days.
A unas 400 millas al este de las Antillas. Hoy fue un avión a investigar esa onda y por fortuna no encontró indicios de formación de sistema tropical, así que tranquilos por ahora. Pero de todos modos la onda está en un ambiente favorable para el desarrollo, así que habrá que seguirla vigilando. Obviamente me refiero a esta área de nubosidad que está sobre esta zona. Y si se fijan bien, la nubosidad que lucía bastante organizada ha perdido justamente esa organización, así es que reitero.
It's not a depression. It is just a cluster of thunderstorms moving off to the west at about 15 to 20 miles an hour. Now just a couple of 100 miles to the east-northeast of the northernmost leewards. It might skirt the leewards tomorrow with some squally, gusty weather, but most of this will stay out over the ocean. Good news and bad news. Good news, it'll probably miss most of the leeward islands, but bad news, it'll stay over water longer. And these waters are real warm in here, and it's going to be getting into an environment that is more conducive to strengthening. So even though right now it doesn't look like much, some of the computer models say it could become something stronger down the road.
And Jim, good morning to all of you at home. Let's get right to it and show you the two areas that we've been watching the past couple of days very closely. Right now, this is the one that we're focusing on. This is the one closest to us. It's still far away from us, but it is about 175 miles to the east of the Lesser Antilles. You can see it's circled by the red because there's a high potential for development with this. Behind it, the one that's about 1,300 miles to the east of the Lesser Antilles, low potential for development, not as organized this morning. So we'll take a look at the water vapor loop and show you the reason why we're anticipating this to intensify by the Leeward Islands is because there's much less wind shear and less drier air working against it. So we're anticipating it to strengthen. In fact, the National Hurricane Center indicating that this could become our next tropical depression. As for right now, the satellite is showing a lot of deep convection indicated by the purples and the reds. We have upper level wind shear working actually in favor of development. Also, drier air not really going to be working against this system either. So that's why the Hurricane Center is indicating that this is expected to intensify today. In the meantime,
well, that's still a couple of days out. But closer in now, we do have our tropical disturbance. It's not a depression per se, although the Hurricane Center will have the aircraft out there today doing some cross-sectional analysis of this one. It's not going to take much to bump it up to a depression status, but for now it is a disturbance, and it does have some squally weather with it, especially over the British Virgin Islands. And by the way, this system will likely track its way generally to the west-northwest, then likely turn a little more westerly, especially if it stays weak. So it will be impacting the islands around Puerto Rico and eventually Hispaniola over the course of later in the day on Friday into Saturday, and then Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas all have to watch this one. Elsewhere, the open
With your tropical update.
And we do have a lot to get through as we're going throughout this early afternoon hour. So as we are taking a look at the formation potential, something we like to show you during this time of the year, whenever you see that red circle, that does indicate where we do have the potential of a system really developing for us. So right now, as we're taking a look at the first storm that right now is closer towards the Leeward Islands, continue to make its way off towards the west. It's just passing over the northern leewards, continue to push its way westward. It has been organizing all throughout this morning and could even develop some more as we go throughout the afternoon. It could be a tropical depression by later on today or even by Friday. Now, I do want to let you know that the Air Force Reserve units are headed out there right now to investigate this storm to see if it has started to increase. And then just taking a look at the latest satellite imagery, we have seen some intensity. I'll talk more about that in just 1 second. The second tropical wave is in the low category, a little bit further off towards the east. It has disorganized shower activity with that one and slow development, if any, is possible. That was the latest thinking earlier this morning. So let's get into a little bit more detail with this one system that we're looking at. And you can definitely see as we're taking a look right now that the thunderstorm activity really has just developed on the southern side of it right now. So that's the system we are continuing to watch. And look at that thunderstorm activity that has blossomed up. When you see that brighter red color, that indicates some cooler cloud tops. So what that means for you at home is that we are seeing more thunderstorms with this system as it is continuing to push its way off towards the west, right around 10 to 15 miles per hour. I want to take a look at the investigation runs of where this might be heading. Then I'll tell you exactly why it will be doing that. Right now, the tropical wave, again, is over the northern Leeward Islands, continuing to push its way to the west. Take a look at what the models are thinking, what the initial thinking is right now. A lot of them are having a consensus of bringing it north of Puerto Rico by sometime, it looks like probably Friday morning into the afternoon hours, and pushing its way off towards the west. And then by Saturday into Sunday, turning its way into the Bahamas, then making that northerly turn away from South Florida. That's the latest thinking right now. As we go in towards Sunday into Monday and Tuesday. So let's take a look at exactly what's going on for us. And on the visible satellite, that thunderstorm activity has started to increase a little bit for us. And we can see some overshooting cloud tops, or kind of that bubble that you see in the middle kind of popping up. That's a thunderstorm that has developed above the cloud layer for us. And on the moisture loop, as you see these brighter purple colors, that indicates those thunderstorms have had popped up. What's interesting to me as we widen out the view a little bit is on either side of the system there is some dry air. So that's really not going to impede this system from developing at all for us. So we do have the dry air that's on either side of it right now. So this system will continue to push its way westward at 10 to 15 miles per hour and probably gain some strength as we go throughout the next couple of days. However, what I'm keeping my eyes on and what could help us out here in South Florida is that there's a stationary front that right now is off the southeast portion of the United States. That is not going anywhere too quickly. So what that means is this could be our steering mechanism as the high pressure that's to the northwest of the system right now continues to push its way to the west. Once this system gets a little bit closer towards this frontal system, then this front might block it from actually making a complete westward track and start turning it more off towards the north. So we are continuing to watch this developing possibly into a tropical depression as we go throughout the afternoon hours. We'll continue to update you, and we are still seeing a little bit of intensity happening with it. Of course, we'll watch it. We'll update you in just.
Okay, it is official. A tornado did touch down in Hialeah.
Looks like this roof got the brunt of it. Ralph Rayburn, what's going on?
Several roofs in the area here off of 28th Street, just west of Palm Avenue. That's going to put it just west of the Hialeah racetrack. You can see the apartments here. We'll bring the camera out to show you that the roadway here has been closed by the Hialeah Police Department. Those two structures right there across the way here just to the north, and we've got big time lightning just to the south of Miami International Airport now. It's always a threat there, but you can see the tiles ripped off this roof. No injuries reported at this time. We have another building over here. Looks like they've already got some plywood up on this one, or maybe that's just having some repair work done. But a very fluid situation here. A command post set up over here by the Hialeah Police and Fire Department. They have gone door to door to check on the safety of everybody in this neighborhood, again, just west of Palm Avenue on 29th Street, between 29th and 28th Street. Take a look at the roof there. That's completely gone. That's going to be an uninhabitable residence there. They're going to, we're sure to see the American Red Cross out here along with other people as a fast-moving storm went through here about 35 or 40 minutes ago. We'll bring the camera out to show you that the remnants of that storm have moved off to the south, or at least building to the south of Miami International Airport there. We have heavy lightning and reported high winds at the airport. That's our story here in 7 Skyforce. I'm Ralph Rayburn reporting live.
All right, thank you, Ralph, for this.
This is pertinent, what's going on here across Dade, Broward, and the Florida Keys. No tornado warnings are now in effect anywhere here across South Florida.
Earlier today, we had several of those, and in particular, the area around Hialeah, where right now there is a report of a tornado. It won't be confirmed here for a day or two until the National Weather Service gets out and investigates the damage to indeed confirm that there was. We do have reports of damage, cars being tossed around Palm Avenue, anywhere between 17th and 21st Street. Here's what's happening tonight.
Updates anytime, day or night. Log on to sunsentinel.com.
A sudden surprise. A tornado touchdown in South Florida.
I was in my room laying down and I was a bang.
Roofs ripped off. Cars flipped over. Residents running for cover. Tisha Lewis, live in Hialeah, detailing the path of damage.
Well, it's an untold story until tonight. Folks forced to leave. 36 families staying with friends and family tonight. 4 families receiving aid from the American Red Cross after their roof came crashing in, leaving their home, their building like the one behind me, unsafe after the storm.
Watch as the twister is caught on camera. This exclusive cell phone capturing the tornado touching down in Hialeah.
You see things on TV and you just don't believe they can actually happen in front of you someday. It's not, we weren't in the movies here.
But the aftermath looks like a movie set. 3 blocks of destruction near West 24th Street and 1st Avenue. Nearly a dozen roofs collapsing, displacing 4 families. People like Peggy Rodriguez, victims of the real-life horror.
The car over there is damaged, hit another car, and the chairs everywhere. People are out here worried.
The Red Cross in action, offering a 3-night hotel stay, food, and aid to the families now homeless after the storm. Their homes destroyed in a matter of moments.
Amazing how one thing could do all this damage.
The amazing images of the tornado reaching down, causing collisions and breaking sturdy objects like this light pole in half. Surveillance cameras from a nearby business capturing images of Mother Nature's work.
The doors blow open on the building. We walked outside and the sky was swirling.
Patrick Haas telling us this is his second brush with a funnel cloud.
I witnessed the tornado that came by, I'm going to guess, 15 years ago. That memory is still burned vividly into my mind.
And now this memory of roaring winds sweeping through, leaving lights dangling and people holding on to hope.
I thought, I hope it doesn't come this way. And we ended up being very lucky, and it didn't come our way.
Not everyone as fortunate. Again, 40 families forced from their homes, and 4 of them tonight receiving aid from the American Red Cross. In the meantime, earlier tonight, there were 5,000 people across Miami-Dade and Broward counties without power. That new number is down to 1,000 in Dade County. Everyone should have their power by midnight. That's the very latest. In Hialeah, Tisha Lewis, CW News at 10.
Tropical issues would be a lead story worthy and a big story, but we've got both to talk about. We begin in the tropics as the hurricane hunters about 4 hours from now will investigate for the 4th time in 3 days this tropical wave. Looks a heck of a lot like a tropical depression or tropical storm, but the past 3 missions have failed to find a defined circulation at the bottom of this. So we just have a tropical wave. We don't have anything else more than that, but it's very wet and very windy throughout the Virgin Islands and new thunderstorms firing up. You notice the center of at least the thunderstorm activity was way up here earlier today. It has now shifted farther to the south and appears to be on a collision course overnight tonight for the entire island of Puerto Rico, which may see 30 to 40 mile-per-hour winds and several inches of rain. But the hurricane hunters did not find a closed area of circulation at the surface, so as impressive as it may look on a satellite signature, it is still just a tropical wave, not a tropical depression or a tropical storm. So no number, no name, just a blob of thunderstorms to look at in the tropics. The reason why we're spending a lot of time talking about this is the potential track. More on that in a second. Thunderstorms firing up much farther to the south. That's the beginning of our headlines for the tropics. Moving into a more favorable environment, almost non-existent wind shear and plenty of warm ocean water ahead of this as long as it doesn't interact with land. That would be Puerto Rico and Español. And way too early for specifics. Don't worry yet, but as of right now, it is and will continue to head in our general direction of South Florida. As for that environment, some very dry air in front of it, high pressure building over top of it, and high pressure over top of a tropical system helps it to blossom even further. And that warm ocean water will also be present for at least the next 2 or 3 days. The Bermuda High sitting to the north, winds always going clockwise around that Bermuda High, carrying this system to the west and then perhaps a turn to the north. The latest run of the computer models have been buying into that turn to the north. The big question for us living in South Florida is, when does that turn to the north occur? The earlier it happens, the farther it would stay away from South Florida. Not good news for the Bahamas, but it would be much, much better news for us in Broward, Miami-Dade, and the Keys. If it takes its time to turn and turns later, then of course it would have moved farther west, perhaps into or close to South Florida, which obviously would be bad for us. We cannot answer this question yet until we get that defined circulation center. Then the computer models actually have a great place to start. That's not going to happen until tomorrow at the earliest. That's the latest in the tropics. Don't worry just yet. Stay informed. Keep watching CW and also keep watching NBC6. 2:40 this afternoon, a tornado touchdown in Hialeah due to this particular thunderstorm. The sea breeze winds coming in one way and the main level winds moving another way. You get rotation sometimes, and we had an EF1 tornado in Hialeah. As for the forecast tonight,
and we wish we had something definitive to tell you, but we don't. Last 2 out of 3 days, the hurricane hunters have been out here to investigate situation number 1 here and have not found a closed circulation. This is an open wave, but it looks like a beauty queen out here, and I'll show you that in just a second. Number 2, number 3 we'll tackle later, but both of these systems will continue to track west and have our interest with them as well. All right, tonight, the Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas are beautiful. Just a gorgeous night up and through here. Nice northeast trade wind, and as a matter of fact, last night, we had breezy conditions in the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Winds were generally out of the northeast at 15 miles an hour. Tonight, there's virtually no wind. We have very light winds here, but there is a little change in wind direction. Puerto Rico is out of the north, or San Juan, I should say. There's a buoy north of San Juan, which is blowing east, howling at about 20 knots, about 25 miles an hour here. And then the St. Croix area has actually got a slight south wind here. So there's definitely kind of a trough or an open wave working its way right up and through here. We've watched the bulk of the thunderstorms tonight stay south of all of the islands, and now they're trying to develop up to the north. We can see that on some of the latest radar imagery. Here's a 6-hour loop. Here's Puerto Rico. Again, U.S. British Virgin Islands, just a whamming of rain here, working its way on off toward the west. St. Croix, you're into this already. And look at this cluster of rain just dropping due south towards San Juan, Puerto Rico. It's going to be a soupy night here. Here's a closer radar. Heavy showers and storms just dropping to the south. But you'll notice there's no counterclockwise twisting. There's no low-pressure center here to get a grip on or a hook on here. So we really don't know what's going to come of all this. The area is in a favorable area for development. I showed you from the satellite picture. Again, it looks great. I've seen hurricanes that look worse than this thing is right now, this open wave, which is amazing. These rainfall rates approaching 1 inch an hour or greater. The good news is they are on the move. And as long as we don't have them back build or expand in coverage, we'll do okay in San Juan. But then you get into the topography here, mountain ranges coming right up. And, you know, you come up from the coastline right into the middle here. So this thing's kind of shaped like a triangle on its edge. And these mountains are pretty high. So you can get some major flooding in through here. And that will be the biggest concern tonight as all this moves across Puerto Rico and the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Now, as we go on in time, it looks like Hispaniola and Haiti will have to deal with this as well in the form of heavy showers and thunderstorms. And we can, whether this thing gets named or not, we can have massive loss of life in the Dominican. So this is a very dangerous area for heavy showers and thunderstorms. Some of the scenarios that we are watching takes this up through the northern Bahamas or down across Puerto Rico and across northern Haiti. The southern track of this does not allow it to develop at all. And Alexander, the northern track may not either. We may still have to wait another day to see what it's going to do. But it looks too good to take our eyes off.
It is still not a tropical depression. Now, yesterday around 5 o'clock, we were thinking it's probably going to be a tropical depression. The hurricane hunters flew around, and could not find a closed, low-level center. Now, they found higher up in the atmosphere turning circulation in the clouds, but down at the surface, which is where the Hurricane Center says they write advisories for systems where they have a center circulation, it was not found. It was just broad and kind of stretched out, and it really hasn't changed that much. In fact, it may be not as organized as it was yesterday in terms of that low-level center. But I'll put it into motion here, and you'll say, when you see the satellite, wow, this looks like something is going on. Look at that, a big round ball of intense thunderstorms now. The heaviest thunderstorm activity moving across Puerto Rico, and you can see the whole system beginning to expand too. These are all the signs of a system that's becoming better organized. But at this point, the Hurricane Hunter had planes out there. Hurricane Hunters were out there. They are just leaving right now. They could not find that closed low-level center again. So still, it is not a depression, and there's no telling when it may be depressed by the National Hurricane Center. But we will keep our eyes on it. Now, here's the radar out of San Juan, Puerto Rico. And you can see there's a general gradual turning to the precipitation here, and the heavy thunderstorms marching their way off to the west. But still no tight center of circulation there. You can clearly see it here in the radar map as this squally weather continues to move on to the west. Now, what's in the future? Oh, boy, there are a lot of possibilities. Let's say it does get its act together. It looks like a little low-level center may be trying to form to the south. That may be the actual center, and if that's the case, it's going to have to come back to the north, of course, across Hispaniola to affect us. But the computer models, based on a center located near the Virgin Islands last night, basically are saying this west to west-north motion will continue. It may interact with land. If it does, that would typically keep it a weaker system, as we've seen with past tropical systems that move across land. If it goes to the north over the open waters, it would have the possibility to intensify. And then beyond that, lots of questions, because it looks like a turn is going to take place, be somewhere in this general area, Monday, Tuesday time frame. Is that turn going to take place a little bit later, where we would feel much more of the effects, or is it going to take earlier? Just too early to tell right now. That's why we need to keep our eyes on. More on this system coming up in just
a radar, because it looks like more rain is in store as we head into the first half.
Yeah, not moving very quickly either up there, unfortunately. And Kelly, more storms expected in the southeast as well. First up, though, we could very well see a formation of a tropical depression, possibly a tropical storm over the next 24 to 36 hours. Right now, that system is exiting Puerto Rico, heading over eastern Hispaniola, and eventually it could have implications on the Bahama Island chain. Some of the forecast models turn it up in that direction as we get well into the weekend. So let's get a check now on some other areas dealing with tropical air and some lightning.
A system in the Caribbean, and as a matter of fact, the National Hurricane Center is keeping a close eye on it as well. The hurricane hunters are scheduled to fly into this system right here over Puerto Rico sometime this afternoon, and they will be determining whether or not we have a closed low-level circulation, and if we do, it becomes a tropical depression, and of course, if it becomes a tropical storm, it attains the name Fay. So right now, it's moving across the passage here between Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, and it is in a favorable environment to develop further. And as we take a closer look at this system, it looks pretty good organizational-wise. You can see that we have some symmetry to the system. We've already seen some dumping rains around Puerto Rico, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches falling in some locations. So they're still concerned about flash flooding here, as well as the possibility of mudslides over the hilly terrain. So as we take a closer look now at, you can see Puerto Rico right here at the top of your screen. To the right, we have the Virgin Islands, where, by the way, we also picked up nearly 2 inches of rain in some locations. Thank goodness, though, for the Virgin Islands, things are beginning to improve for us. But now we're going to have to watch out over the Dominican Republic, and after that, the Bahama Islands, and that's where we can expect to see this system really intensify. So right now it's not classified, it is not a tropical depression yet, but we're keeping an eye on the sustained winds, and at times we have seen some gusts, especially on the south side of Puerto Rico, up to about 20 or 23 miles an hour. But for the most part, the winds are not a problem at this time. However, this is forecast to strengthen up. There's the rain. That's our problem in the meantime. Very heavy rain still going on here, central Puerto Rico and the western coast of Puerto Rico, so flooding will remain a possibility here. And then we're going to have to watch out across the Turks and Caicos Islands as that system works its way off in that direction, and then eventually through the Bahama Islands. So
the families are waking up out of their homes.
Yeah, they were forced out after a tornado touched down, leaving behind a trail of destruction. CBS 4's Leave Davalos is live in Hialeah. Leave, our residents expected to be out cleaning up this morning. What's going on out there right now?
Oh, yes, they are. Just take a look behind me at this apartment complex where the tornado ripped parts of the roof off this apartment complex. Many homeowners saying that it happened so fast they didn't have time to take anything with them. Now, Chopper 4 capturing the path of destruction from the sky. The tornado damaging several Hialeah apartment complexes, damaging windows and roofs over a 5-block area. The wind even picking up cars and pushing them into each other. Now, a CBS 4 viewer captured the images of a funnel cloud taking shape. You see it right there. The storm, and it's damaging several apartment complexes, pushing cars against each other, and even ripping a roof off one home. Amazingly, though, through it all, nobody was hurt.
It was very scary, very scary. It was big, very big.
Metro is nothing in comparison with the noise and the images that we saw, you know, the whipping tail of clouds coming down and picking up cars up in the air and flipping them.
Now, FP&L managed to restore power within hours, and the American Red Cross is assisting at least 40 families that have been displaced because of the tornado that hit yesterday. We're live in Hialeah. Leave Davalos, CBS 4 News this morning.
2 inches of rain across the northern Virgin Islands around St. Thomas. Has not been the greatest weather here around St. Croix, but our weather is improving as the system is moving away from Puerto Rico, now moving across the Mona Pass toward the Dominican Republic. So here's a look at our visible satellite imagery taken from space, the exact picture of the clouds, if you will, swirling around this system. We only have a couple of images available to us right now, but you can certainly see some decent outflow aloft, and it is in a favorable area for development because we don't expect
Live from the news station, this is 7 News, first at 4.
Now at 4 o'clock, South Florida waiting for word from the National Hurricane Center on the status of this system. Will this wave be upgraded to something more serious?
Well, whatever it becomes, will this be a South Florida storm? Right now at 4 o'clock on Friday, the models seem to say yes.
That's battering right now the Dominican Republic, and then tonight right over Haiti. It is over 900 miles removed from South Florida. It seems like a long way, a long distance, but this can travel rather quickly. It could intensify just as fast, and it could be very close to South Florida by the start of next week. Take a look at the close-up imagery. There's Puerto Rico. Here's the Dominican Republic. There's Haiti. Notice the colors. See the yellows and the dark oranges? That represents where you're going to find the heaviest of the rainfall. Regardless whether this gets upgraded to a depression, this is a big major headache for our friends in Hispaniola. Plenty of rain that will cause land and mudslides as early as this evening and going throughout the day tomorrow as it tracks right across the island. Let me show you also what the hurricane hunters have found out within the last 5 to 10 minutes. We have 2 planes out there, one from the Air Force and one from NOAA. The hurricane hunter vessel out there, I should say aircraft, has just gotten reports of 66-mile-per-hour winds. That obviously puts it way beyond depression status and into tropical storm status, and the same with NOAA. They're getting reports now of 58-mile-per-hour winds. Now, this system will continue to move towards the west-northwest, and the probabilities of this becoming a depression in the next hour or two is very high, better than a 50% chance of that taking place. Here are some of the early model runs, and keep in mind, we still don't have a close center circulation at the surface, so the model runs can be sketchy. Until we actually get that center, our tracks can be off. But this is what we're looking at. High pressure sitting across the Atlantic, trade winds to the south. That will push the system towards the west-northwest. All the models are in fair agreement that that will happen, but everything depends on the western edge of the high. If this moves back plenty, then it looks like it might take a turn towards the Bahamas. If it stays put, then it looks like it could move across South Florida, and a lot of models also even have it going into the Gulf of Mexico. This is a good close-up view just to give you an idea. There are the Bahamas. Here's South Florida. Take a look at all the model runs from the Bahamas through South Florida, the Keys, and into the Gulf. Now, here's what we can expect. Throughout the Dominican Republic tonight, throughout Haiti tomorrow, it's going to get very windy with plenty of rainfall. They could even see 5 to 6 inches of rain. What happens next is still really up in the air. The models are suggesting that this could take a track towards the Bahamas, and that would be terrible for our friends here because it could pick up steam. It could be stronger by the time it arrives in the western Bahamas. Now, case scenario number 2 has the system tracking right along the Florida Straits and possibly impacting the Keys and then becoming a Gulf threat. Case scenario number 3, which is really the worst case of all, has the system intensifying, moving across the Florida Straits, and then hugging the coast. This will impact Miami-Dade, Broward County, and then points to the north. So right now is the time to prepare. Make sure you have all your supplies ready. This is just in case. There are still many variables out there that we are looking at. one of the variables that we're looking at is the moisture content of the system. It looks very well organized. This is the water vapor imagery. Green represents all the rain that's associated with it, and you can see that it's loaded with moisture. That'll be a problem for the Dominican Republic. Now, also, all the dry air that was ahead of it is long gone. So for the time being, there's no possibility of this weakening any. As far as the long-range models, you see this right here? That is the jet stream. We are hoping that this dips down in time to actually help deflect whatever comes across our way and push it back into the open waters of the Atlantic. We are hoping to get the very latest information from the Hurricane Center within the next 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll bring it to you.
Officials. Dave?
Well, Belkis, this certainly wasn't a warning alarm. That might be a little bit premature, but it is certainly an attention getter when both emergency management directors from Miami-Dade and Broward counties take to precautionary briefings to not only let us, the media, but have us let you know what they're doing this weekend as they keep their eye on this system. Let's take you to video shot inside both EOCs today. First in Broward County and Plantation. You can see that it was empty today, but Broward Emergency Management Director Chuck Lanza says that they will have a core skeletal staff coming in Sunday morning to begin to monitor the situation. In Miami-Dade County, a similar situation, they ran through a drill today. And Emergency Management Director here, Douglas Bass, said, sort of snarkily, but was making a serious point, they're not taking the weekend off here either.
We will be putting protective actions in place as appropriate to protect the residents and visitors of Miami-Dade County.
Based on the potential of it becoming a hurricane, we'll probably activate sometime on Sunday. But once again, that'll be a small core group of staff members, and then we'll expand that as needed.
So with those warnings from our emergency management directors, of course the warning should go out to you as well. If you didn't make your hurricane plan at the beginning of the season, you should begin to look at your family emergency plan. Make sure you've got 72 hours worth of food and water and supplies like batteries and flashlights in case the storm does come this direction. Chuck Lanza there in Broward says it's not time to rush out to the Home Depot and buy your plywood or anything like that. But it is time to start getting out those documents, making sure you've got everything in order, and talk with your family members in case you do need to make plans this weekend. Coming up at 5, we've spoken to some people about town. People do have one eye looking at this storm, even as we are heading into what is sort of the unofficial last weekend of the summer. That's the latest here from the Miami-Dade EOC. Dave Cartoonan, 7 News.
Hunters. There are a couple of planes out there. There's the Air Force, and we also have a NOAA research aircraft. Hurricane Hunters coming back with 66-mile-per-hour winds, NOAA with 58-mile-per-hour winds. And right now we have been told and confirmed that this has been upgraded to a tropical storm. We have Tropical Storm Fay in our hands, and the government of the Dominican Republic has just issued a tropical storm warning for the Dominican Republic and for the entire north coast of the island, and including now south and east San Pedro de Macorís. A tropical storm warning is also in effect for the north coast of Haiti. So, very latest information coming in from the National Hurricane Hunters. I should say from the National Hurricane Center, due to the information acquired by the reconnaissance aircraft, we now have Tropical Storm Fay in our hands. That changes everything. This has come to pass. It has become not only a depression, it has gotten bumped up all the way up to a tropical storm.
Muy buenas tardes. Interrumpimos programación para informarles que el Centro Nacional de Huracanes ahora a las 5 de la tarde oficialmente declarará ese sistema localizado cerca de Santo Domingo, en República Dominicana, no solo como una depresión tropical, pero ahora como la tormenta tropical Fay. La tormenta tropical Fay, nombrada oficialmente a las 5 de la tarde de hoy con vientos máximos sostenidos de 40 millas por hora. El centro de la tormenta a 35 millas al este de la ciudad capital de República Dominicana, Santo Domingo, y se mueve hacia el oeste a unas 14 millas por hora. Avisos de tormenta tropical se han puesto en vigor para gran parte de la Española. Vigilancias de tormenta tropical están en efecto para partes de Cuba. Este sistema estará interactuando con la topografía de República Dominicana y habrá que ver cómo sale de ese país. pero en todo caso su rumbo es uno que pudiera llevarlo hacia la zona del sur de la Florida en unos días. Tendremos mucho más información durante el transcurso de la tarde y obviamente nuestra edición noticiosa a las 6 de la tarde. Acompáñenos.
Happen, and as you'll see from the future track in a moment, the end result is still somewhat what we've been calling for the last day or two. Here is the first advisory on Tropical Storm Fay. It's 35 miles east of Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, so right on the coastline there, moving pretty quick to the west at 14 miles per hour. Highest sustained winds are at 40 miles per hour. Now here is the future track and 3-day cone, and the first important aspect of this cone to point out, obviously, is we definitely see it pointed right in the direction of the Keys in South Florida. We're directly in the middle of the cone, and the other thing to point out is look what is along the cone through the middle. A lot of land. In fact, Cuba traverses the entire middle part of the cone, and then of course we have the rest of the Dominican Republic and Haiti that the storm will be tracking over or close to for at least the next 24 hours. And here's the timeline. So here we are tomorrow evening, again probably in the waters somewhere between Haiti and eastern Cuba, and then likely moving across or near Cuba during the day Sunday, and then sometime Sunday night and early Monday it looks like emerging into the Florida Straits, and then potentially, again, that's when we were thinking is that Monday and then eventually into Tuesday, that's when we might see the greatest impact from this storm. Right now, the Hurricane Center is keeping Tropical Storm Fay as a tropical storm and is not forecasting a hurricane because of all the interactions with land. However, it must be stressed if it did take more of a southern route and stayed out over the waters of the Caribbean, for instance, or a more northern route and stayed off the north coast of Cuba, we could be looking at a much stronger storm. But right now, the forecast is to maintain tropical storm intensity throughout this 3-day cone. We don't see any change there. The satellite picture this afternoon, here's the storm in relation to South Florida. Big storms over the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico last night as the disturbance moved across. Today, the Dominican Republic is getting the heaviest rains. That will spread into Haiti again tonight during tomorrow. Some showers and bands across the Turks and Caicos, but the core of the storm, again, will be mostly involving the island of Hispaniola and then eventually eastern Cuba. A close-up view of the storm again this afternoon shows that these purples in here, that's some really intense rains, again, on the eastern end of the island. It looks like things are improving in Puerto Rico, but again, things will be getting worse in Haiti, and even Jamaica could very well see some impacts from Tropical Storm Fay, and then eventually, of course, eastern Cuba, and then we have to talk about the Turks and Caicos. But again, if it stays to the south, the worst of it is likely going to be to the south of them. What are the computer models saying this afternoon? One thing you'll notice from this computer model guidance is that it's very close to the forecast cone that I just showed you from the National Hurricane Center. And again, the end is Wednesday here across portions of North Florida. So again, this is the Monday, Tuesday time frame. And again, very close to basically this forecast cone we just saw issued. And you saw a lot of the computer models track over the island of Cuba, and I think that's why the land interaction is going to be the biggest factor over the next several days as to exactly how strong Fay may get, or rather how weak Fay remains. Right now, a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm.
Meteorologist Trent Eric, start us off.
Yeah, Charles and Lori, the reconnaissance aircraft missions flying in and around the storm today have finally found a tropical storm. The winds have picked up, and also we've got that westerly wind, which is a component we've been missing for the past couple of days. We'll take you in a little closer. You can see the flare-up of convection here over the eastern tip of the Dominican Republic. A lot of rain showing up here on the radar out of Puerto Rico, but bottom line, this storm finally, after days of talking about it, has finally become a tropical system. Now a tropical storm with Fay, with winds right now sustained at 40 miles per hour, gusting to 50. This is the first advisory on the tropical storm as of 5 o'clock. It puts it 868 miles to the southeast of the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area. Pressure still over 1,000 millibars at 1,008, and the movement right now is west at 14 miles per hour, which will move it over a very mountainous regions here over the Dominican Republic with mountain peaks of 11,000 feet. So this is really going to hamper the storm from strengthening as it interacts with land here, not only for the first day or so as you see the forecast track, but perhaps all the way through Monday afternoon, as right now the projected path from the National Hurricane Center keeps it very close to land around the island of Hispaniola, just north of Jamaica, over Cuba, and then emerging over the water somewhere here as far west here as the western tip of Cuba, as far east as the Bahamas. And the timeline here, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And for a little more dissection here on this track, I want to go over to hurricane specialist Max Mayfield. Max, what do you see here?
Well, first of all, Trent, that low-level circulation or the hint of the low-level center that we've been following for a few days there on the west edge of the thunderstorm activity really just dissipated. What's happened here, that mid-level circulation has finally worked its way down to the surface, and both the Air Force and NOAA planes out there did a really good job of flying right around the coast of the Dominican Republic to see how strong those winds actually were, and they definitely have become stronger. Sometimes that happens, and you start out with the instant storm here. Looking at the graph here, and as Lori said, the models did indeed shift westward. Many of them are now along the Florida west coast. The most likely scenario from the Hurricane Center is for it to be somewhere in the vicinity of the windward passage here by tomorrow afternoon, by Sunday afternoon moving over Cuba, and then by Monday afternoon likely emerging from the north coast of Cuba, headed into the Florida Straits here. Now, we want to understand what the intensity is going to do here as it interacts with those large islands there of Hispaniola and Cuba. It's going to have a hard time strengthening. That circulation is going to get disrupted by the high terrain there. So we really don't think it's going to be a wind event there in the Caribbean. But let's make sure we understand what the cone means here. 2/3 of the time the good news is that 2/3 of the time the track actually stays within that cone. And right now it could, those models could shift back and the track could ease a little bit more to the east, or it could be over here more in the Gulf of Mexico here. So, the message here is that we really need to keep watching this and make sure we don't get a big surprise. And looking at the satellite imagery, and this is what has looked so impressive, for days now. The upper level environment really couldn't be any more favorable. You have that clockwise motion right over the heavy thunderstorm activity. The center itself now is actually not too far east of Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. It's just not going to strengthen significantly here as it moves over the island there of Hispaniola. As far as the watches and warnings, the yellow represents the tropical storm warning. Both the north coast of the Dominican Republic and the north coast of Haiti, also portions of eastern Cuba, the Turks and Caicos Islands here, and the southeastern Bahamas have a tropical storm warning. The green represents a tropical storm watch. Those will be updated as the storm moves along here. But I don't think the wind is going to be the main thing here. It's really going to be the rainfall, and the Hurricane Center is calling for 4 to 8 inches of rain. Some isolated areas up to 12 inches, and that's going to be a real concern there over the Dominican Republic and Haiti, especially over Haiti. They always have a problem with flash floods and mudslides down there, so even if it doesn't strengthen, it's still going to be a big deal for them down there. And our friends in the Bahamas certainly need to take notice here. Sometimes a weak system like this, as it interacts with land, the big islands there, the center could even reform. The circulation gets disrupted and that center could reform. And if that center were to pop out sooner on the north coast of, say, Hispaniola or Cuba, then it will have more time to intensify over the warm waters. The waters are very, very warm. The environment aloft is favorable. So we still need to watch this very carefully here. Don't focus on that skinny line of the track.
All right, here we go, everybody. I'm local 10 meteorologist John Giraldi. Here is the very latest. Now, Fay is churning over the Caribbean, as you can see right here, and it's over 600 miles away from South Florida. As we zoom in, you can see it's looking a little bit ragged because overnight it went over a lot of mountainous areas across the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and now the center of circulation is just starting to emerge. Haiti, it's probably right about in this location, and you can see that it's a little bit less cylindrical, not as cylindrical as it was before, but it is expected to gain strength as it moves over the open sea right in this area of the Caribbean. Now I want to show you why we're expecting this to make a turn more off towards the northwest in time. Currently, the past several days, actually high pressure was to the north, driving it to the west, and there is a trough of low pressure to our north right now, and that is the reason why it's going to start turning with time. You can actually see this as you take a look at the National Hurricane Center's official forecast track. It's going to start developing over the next, let's say several hours as we go into the course of the afternoon. The wind speeds gradually increasing, they think, as it moves into the Gulf, or actually the Caribbean Sea, and skirts just to the south of Cuba in the next day. Now this position right here is sometime later tomorrow night into early on Monday. It's 2 a.m. on Monday They are forecasting a Category 1 hurricane by then. That means winds at about 75 miles per hour, and they keep it a Category 1 as it moves across the Keys, and that would be late Monday night into early Tuesday, and then continue up the west coast of Florida after that. So again, there is this error cone right here, this forecast cone of error, which means this line could be anywhere from here, which would be to our east, or here, which would be over the Gulf. So depending upon exactly where this storm goes will actually mean exactly what we get in terms of bad weather. But right now it is forecast to move over the lower end of the Keys. Now,
folks, check this out. If you look on the corner of your screen, this is Fay. A week ago, we were tracking this tropical wave way out in the central Atlantic, and you can see initially not much organization here. The upper level winds very unfavorable. Then came the midweek time frame, Wednesday into Thursday. As it began to approach the Lesser Antilles, the upper level winds, you can see the shear, how the clouds are going from southwest to northeast. The winds aren't favorable for development. And then all of a sudden, as the system gets into the Caribbean, it becomes a little better organized as the winds become more favorable, but then it begins interacting with land. So in the long run, the fact that the winds have been unfavorable and the fact that it's interacted with land so frequently has been good as far as keeping the system fairly weak. The problem is things are going to change, though. We're going to see things beginning to change significantly. Here's the winds at 45 miles an hour now, movement off to the west at 15. A heavy rain threat is the greatest concern right now from Fay. That will be the case for Cuba as well. Main concern is going to be heavy rain. Unfortunately, as the center passes Cuba during the day on Monday and into Tuesday, that's when things are going to become a little more interesting and a little more complicated, whereas for now it's been a heavy rain threat, but once it gets up here towards the southeast coast of the United States, winds could become a greater concern, and anyone in the eastern Gulf of Mexico all the way over to the Carolinas, I don't want to just focus on Florida, needs to be prepared for the potential, Kim, of possibly a hurricane threatening the lower 48, maybe as early to middle next week.
All right, the next 24 hours we should have a better, forecast on the exact path. All right, thanks.
La imagen ha dejado lluvias torrenciales ya sobre República Dominicana. La realidad es que gran parte de la circulación está al sur de Haití, toda esta área roja, el grueso de las tormentas, el centro de la tormenta está un poco más al norte, a unas 60 millas al sur de la ciudad de Guantánamo. Pero bueno, vamos a hacer un acercamiento a ver qué es lo que pudiéramos tener en los próximos días y cómo nos pudiera influir o cómo pudiera influir también para el estado de la Florida, o por lo menos los primeros cálculos que tenemos. Aquí está la tormenta, acá está Guantánamo y en general, como les decía, el núcleo principal de las lluvias está un poco más al sur. Se anticipa que en áreas como la Sierra Maestra pueden haber algunos puntos localizados entre 10 y 15 pulgadas de lluvia. Digamos que es un organismo productor de lluvia. Hasta ahora ha sido no solamente en Puerto Rico, pero ahora se intensifican las lluvias. La imagen de vapor mostrando que tiene muy, pero muy buenas condiciones atmosféricas para, a pesar de las montañas, siga con vida. Es decir, este es un sistema que no debe morir como le pasa a otros al tocar tierra, etcétera, etcétera. Noten la salida extensa, una salida que parece de un ciclón muy grande y realmente es una pequeña tormenta todavía, pero esto pudiera favorecer que siga con vida en las próximas horas.
And the Florida Keys are not taking any chances. They are getting ready in Key West to evacuate tourists. That's where we find Local 10's Janine Stanwood. Janine, what's the mood there tonight?
Well, right now, Roger, really it's business as usual. There really are a lot of tourists here. It's a really busy Saturday. A lot of people are walking around the streets, but the Emergency Operations Center has partially activated. They activated at about 5 p.m. Likely we'll see orders for those visitors tomorrow, as well as those living in low-lying areas and RVs. They may be asked to leave as early as Monday. Officials say this really is the time to start getting your food, getting your gas. It's really the time to make a plan. If you have a boat, this is the time to really start securing it and making sure that everything is okay with that. Officials say this is not the time to panic, but it's definitely the time to have a plan. It's not time to evacuate the Keys yet. Traffic on the Jewfish Creek Bridge, newly raised and almost finished, really was moving at a normal clip. But as we move south, signs of preparation. So you're starting to board up already?
Yes. Just in case the weather turns bad and I don't get a chance to do this.
This little building in Marathon has been in Scott Kavanaugh's family for more than 50 years. Now he and his son want to protect it. What happened to your hurricane shutters?
The people that were renting our business before got rid of them.
At a gas station just before Key West, folks were filling up and listing all the things they need to do.
Water, gas, and some food. My shutters, I'm closing them to a certain extent. I'm removing all outside furniture. I'm going to be getting gasoline for my generator.
Generators, water, and food for 72 hours. Those are all the things that you need to start getting together if you are a resident here. Again, if you are a tourist here in Key West, this may be the time to start thinking about leaving. You may be asked to leave again as early as tomorrow. If there is any confusion, though, the Monroe County Department of Emergency Operations has activated a rumor control hotline. Let's give you that number. It is 305-809-1108. Again, 305-809-1108. That's the number to call if you have any questions about activations of evacuation orders or, again, the Emergency Operations Center. At this point, the airport here at Key West is open. The Naval Air Force Reserve Base is also open. Business as usual, but you definitely can start to tell, though, Nikki and Roger, that people, especially who live here, are starting to plan because they were here during Wilma. It was a big rain event. They definitely don't want the same thing to happen to them again.
Janine, and for the Caymans, Jamaica as well, and potentially right here in South Florida down the road by the early and mid portions of the upcoming week. The hurricane hunters, reconnaissance aircraft, have been flying in and out of this thing for the past couple of days, and they're indicating a very well-organized system in the upper levels, but in the lower levels downstairs it's still kind of sputtering along. It's sucking in some drier air and not really too terribly organized where it matters the most, down close to ground level at the surface of the ocean. So once that gets better organized, it'll look a lot different than it does right now. But you can see that we still have a system that's trying to get better organized out there across the Caribbean Sea tonight. It is now over water, pulling farther and farther away from Haiti, midway between Haiti, Jamaica, and eastern Cuba. You can see in the water vapor loop a ton of tropical moisture. And as you mentioned, Joel, that's where a lot of the rainfall is falling from, that core of that deep, rich green that you see right there. We have just an abundance of moisture, and it's dumping out in the form of about 8 to 12 inches of rain. And when you mix that in with some of the higher terrains on some of those islands, it causes terrible and perhaps deadly mudslides and flash floods in many areas. That's the way it looks from outer space. Here's the way it looks on the ground as far as the actual numbers: 19.3 north, 75.8 west. That puts it about 200 miles to the southeast of Camagüey, Cuba. And it's moving off as it has been doing all day long today to the west at 14 with top winds of 45 miles an hour. There's the forecast track. Takes it up across Cuba into the eastern.
Gracias, Fausto. Y nos enfocamos casi exclusivamente en la situación de Fay. Fay, en su interacción con la isla de Española, se vio bastante afectada y por eso no se ha fortalecido. Los vientos esta noche de solo 45 millas por hora y la imagen de satélite confirma que el sistema está bastante mal estructurado. Vean esta imagen de satélite para que puedan apreciar lo desorganizada que sigue la tormenta a esta hora de la noche. Ya les dije, los vientos máximos 45 millas por hora. También es bueno que lleve un rumbo directo hacia el oeste. Actualmente a unas 14 millas por hora la velocidad de traslación que lleva hacia el oeste, con su centro a 175 millas al sureste de Camagüey y como 500 millas al sureste de Miami. Repito, rumbo hacia el oeste. Ahora analicemos bien de nuevo esta proyección del Centro Nacional de Huracanes de la trayectoria que debería llevar Fay, enfocándonos no necesariamente en cada uno de estos puntos, o sea, utilicemos esto para ver la intensidad proyectada, no necesariamente el punto exacto donde va a estar, pudiera estar un poco más a la izquierda, un poco más a la derecha, pero en todo caso sí sabemos que en 48 horas, o sea, el lunes, es el día que los Cayos se van a ver más bien afectados. En los Cayos hay mucho mayor riesgo de vientos huracanados de lo que hay aquí en la zona metropolitana del sur de la Florida, obviamente porque estaría pasando más cerca. Y también lo mismo es el caso para la costa occidental de la península floridana. El riesgo ahí es mayor, aunque estamos nosotros también dentro de esta zona de lo que el famoso cono, ¿no?, de cómo debería comportarse durante las próximas 48 a 72 horas.
People writing in, do I need to put up my shutters in Kindle? Do I need to put up my shutters in Marathon? And this kind of goes back to a storm back with Charlie back in 2004 on why we can't single out a specific location. You were director of the Hurricane Center then. Compared Charlie to what we were looking at the forecast path of Fay.
Well, and we'll talk about the track there, and I remember that so well. And to this day, I still talk to people over on the West Coast that talk about that sharp right turn. And when Charlie was coming up here over western Cuba, You can see it was moving northward right in here. We have the forecast to come up here into Tampa Bay. And to this day, some people are talking about that sharp right turn. Well, the actual track is plotted there, and there was no sharp right turn. There was a very, very gradual turn here to the north-northeast, and that really was the difference between Tampa Bay and Charlotte Harbor. So with Fay, we don't want that to happen to us. We don't want to be surprised if it jogs a little bit to the left here or a little bit to the right. That's all within the cone of uncertainty.
All right, Max, good lesson here. Just going back a couple of years to 04 why we can't let our guard down with this system. Roger will be back in a few moments. We actually have some rain bands
from Ocean Reef north through Jupiter Inlet, also Lake Okeechobee under a tropical storm watch. You can see Grand Cayman also under a tropical storm watch. What is under a tropical storm warning right now is portions of Cuba from central Cuba down towards the south, and you see portions of the central Bahamas also under a tropical storm watch, as Fay now has winds sustained at 50 miles per hour on that west-northwestward track. Hurricane watch is in effect, and that does include portions of South Florida and down through the Keys. That is from Ocean Reef down all the way through Key West. That does include portions of the southwest coast of South Florida and central Cuba off towards the north and the west under a hurricane watch right now. So where is Fay going to be going? Of course, that's exactly what we need to know. First, let's take a look at the satellite imagery to show you. When you look at this picture with me, you can see the red color. That indicates some taller cloud tops, which means colder cloud tops and more intense thunderstorm activity. Hurricane hunters have had a hard time finding the center of circulation since it is so close to the southern tip right now of Cuba. So again, they can't really pinpoint the exact center of circulation, but we're continuing to watch it just to the south right now of Cuba, making its way off towards the west and the northwest. What's interesting to me is that we're now starting to see some cloud cover rolling its way through the Bahamas and a little bit of cloud cover with some moisture making its way into portions of South Florida with some thunderstorm activity. So we are seeing the effects of Fay just a little bit forced. And as we take a look at the tighter view, Jamaica dealing with a large amount of rain and thunderstorm activity for us this morning. And this again will make its way off to the west-northwest. It really was eroded a little bit as it made its way over the Dominican Republic and Haiti. However, now making its way back out over open water, could re-strengthen. Right now, the latest thinking is by 2 a.m. on Monday. So again, here we are on this Sunday morning down to the south tip of Cuba, about 24 hours out for us, making its way over central Cuba as it makes that northwestward turn. Still as a tropical storm is the latest thinking right now. However, by 2 p.m. on Monday, making its way back out over open water over the Florida Straits. So there is a possibility of some re-strengthening. That's why the Keys right now, all the way up through Ocean Reef and the Upper Keys, is under a hurricane watch, because we could see some re-strengthening. But right now, the latest thinking is for a tropical storm to continue to make its way through the Keys, possibly the lower Keys, sometime Monday night into the early morning hours on Tuesday, as it continues that northwestward and then northerly projection, pushing its way up then and through Tampa Bay by 2 a.m. on Wednesday. Here's a little bit of a tighter view of what I'm talking about.
Here you can see on the satellite picture the reds and the yellows here on the satellite, indicating the colder cloud tops. And that's where you have some of the heavier rainfall and the stronger wind gusts. So here in southeast Cuba, that's where the most intense weather is right now. And here's Jamaica, and you're seeing these red blobs moving across. So the flood threat high in Jamaica today. And as this tropical storm moves out to the west-northwest, we will see some heavy rains and squalls moving along the coast of Cuba. Closer to home here in Florida, some of those outer rain bands will get close to South Florida and the Keys today and tonight, but more significant impacts from rain and wind not expected until later on Monday. So
we've got a tropical storm, 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm to be exact, and it's south of Cuba right now, moving to the west-northwest at 13 miles per hour. Lowest pressure, by the way, 1,003 millibars is estimated. Just looking at an observation just on the coast of Cuba, 1,006 millibars, so it's not very far offshore. We're not seeing any signs of rapid strengthening into this system. And when we put this into motion here and put some winds on here, you can see the circulation. Relatively small circulation, and away from it, the winds are not, these are sustained winds now, not gusts, but the sustained winds are not all that strong, 25 miles per hour here on the southeast coast of Cuba, and over land running about 16. Of course, higher gusts in the thunderstorms, and some of that heavy rain is over Jamaica today, so watch out for flooding there. The system's going to follow this little trough. You can see where the winds turn back around from the north and then back out of the northwest. So it's going to follow this trough along the coast of Cuba the next 12 to 24 hours, and then take a turn more toward the northwest as the upper air environment is going to turn it that way. There's a circulation there. There's an upper level low to its west and this trough to the north, and it's going to turn the low level flow more out of the south as it comes up and head towards South Florida over the next 24 to 36 hours. So the weather will be going downhill in the Florida Straits over the next 24 hours, and here's a projected path crossing
deteriorating conditions until much later tonight. Now here's a look at the wider view, and you can see some of the outer bands of Fay now moving across Cuba into the Florida Straits, but they're still a good distance away from the Keys. These aren't going to get here until later on this evening, so most of the daylight hours are going to be dry. We will see a couple of scattered showers and thunderstorms develop across South Florida today, but
the town right now. And for people who live in the Keys, who live on boats, a lot of people do, who live in mobile homes, those people are being urged to spend the night in shelters in Key West. There are 4 of them that are open right now. You don't want to be in anything that can be moved by the wind, all right? So we'll keep you posted. The center of the circulation still south of Cuba, but this tropical storm, and you can see the center of the circulation right here quite well, right there. There's the center, and the reason why it's open, is visible, is that there's some dry air on the west side. That's one of the limiting factors. Another one is that it's encountered so much land. It's moved over Hispaniola, now Cuba, just off to the south of Cuba. Some strengthening is likely. We have seen an increase in showers right near the center, on the east side of the center, and this is moving over the open water. So, Fay.
And the new 5 o'clock advisory is now out on Fay. There appears to be a bit of encouraging news for parts of South Florida. Good evening, everybody. On this Sunday evening, I'm Craig Stevens.
I'm Belkis Nure. Before we get to Fay's track, some important information about schools closings. Right now, we're going to go to the National Hurricane Center.
Good evening. This is Bill Reed at the National Hurricane Center with the 5 o'clock advisory on Tropical Storm Fay. Fay continues to be relatively disorganized while moving over the open waters just off the south central coast of Cuba. Aircraft have been flying in the storm today and confirmed that we have neither gained strength nor lost strength since this morning. Lowest pressure is still around 1,003 millibars. Top winds are about 50 miles an hour. The remainder of this afternoon and into this evening, the storm will stay over the water south of Cuba. There is a possibility that the system could intensify some before making a second landfall in Cuba later tonight. 2 of the issues that we have are the fact that the storm is fairly disorganized, and we think as it crosses from where it is about here and then crosses into the Florida Straits sometime tonight and tomorrow morning, that we could get re-intensification of the system before reaching the Florida Keys. Because of that, we've extended our watches now up through Tarpon Springs on the west coast of Florida, and we've also seen a movement of the storm a little bit further off to the west in the last 6 hours. Hence, we expect that we're going to have a lessening threat perhaps on the east coast of Florida, and continue to have a significant threat of the impact of Fay as it goes up the west coast of Florida. The conditions will worsen. We have a tropical storm warning in effect for the middle and lower Keys of Florida as it goes through there during the day tomorrow and tomorrow night. And then we'll have to look further downstream as to what the storm will do as it reaches the eastern Gulf just off the coast of the west coast of Florida. In addition to the tropical storm force winds and the potential to become a Category 1 hurricane as it goes through the eastern Gulf, we expect to have 4 to 8 inches of rainfall along the Florida Peninsula as the storm moves to the north.
Tropical Storm Fay, first of all, the good news is that it remains disorganized right over the Caribbean Sea, and it's being impacted because of the proximity to land, to Cuba. And the bad news is that it still appears to be making its way to the Florida Keys, but for the time being, it looks like it'll just be a tropical storm. We're keeping our fingers crossed that indeed that's all we are going to get. This is the very latest advisory. 50-mile-per-hour winds. It really hasn't changed much over the last 12 hours, and that's good news. The pressure remains steady. 21.0 north, 80.2 west, now moving west-northwest at 15. It's about 270 miles southeast of Key West, Florida. Here's our very latest satellite imagery. Look at this. We have a feeder band that broke off from Tropical Storm Fay, making its way through the Bahamas. And we've already seen some showers and thunderstorms move across South Florida. And that's probably what we will see on and off now over the next 12 hours as the center of circulation continues to make its way towards central Cuba, then going across the Florida Straits. And now most of the models are suggesting that this will probably just skirt right across the Keys and then head towards western Florida. So most of the focus now will probably be centered over the Keys, Naples, Fort Myers, and possibly Tampa. But we are not out of the woods yet. As you know, tropical storm force winds can extend away from the center for over 100 miles, so we will probably still see the squally weather here across South Florida. This is great radar coming out of Cuba. There is the center of circulation. And here's the main reason why this system has yet to actually get its act together and turn into a hurricane. As the feeder bands come across, they basically act as a big spoon. They kind of pick up all the moisture and humidity from the Caribbean Sea. That's the energy that these systems need, and take it to the center of circulation, and that helps it grow. It's not happening. Most of the rain is being blocked by the high terrain of Cuba, and it looks like that will be the pattern over the next 24 hours.
Fay, with maximum winds at 50 miles per hour, continues to track generally to the west-northwest, but there's a big ridge of high pressure that's sitting over Mexico, and the thought is that that's going to force that system to the north over the warmer waters of the Gulf of Mexico. The computer models are showing several different possible tracks. We're thinking at the moment that maybe by Tuesday evening it could re-enter the mainland or enter the mainland over northern Florida. We'll continue to watch that very closely. Interest throughout the state of Florida being told to carefully monitor the storm. There is a hurricane watch in effect for much of the west coast and for South Florida. These are rain bands that you see from that tropical storm that have been affected.
Our extended coverage of Evening Edition. Fay on the brain for sure, right? This is our brand new advisory as of 11 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. Pressure staying the same. Moving now a little bit more to the north. It was a west-northwest track, now a northwest track, so it may be feeling some of those southwesterly winds in the upper levels. Winds still sustained at 50 miles per hour. So that's what we're looking at as far as Fay goes. We have plenty more to show you as well. Let's go back over to Titan 2 and take you through a couple other frames. Here's a zoomed-in look right now. Look at that. You can see this next little explosion of thunderstorms right around the circulation. This is a sign here that potential strengthening could be occurring down the road. Still, though, as far as strength goes, on the weak side for a tropical storm, once we hit about 75 miles per hour, that's when it would be a hurricane. That's possible, but a lot of things still have to happen. We still have to work through Cuba with our system. Not necessarily a very healthy type situation for a tropical system be in when it has to cross land. That usually weakens systems. The one thing this system has going in its favor, though, as far as strengthening, typically flat here through western Cuba. That's where the system will be crossing. The big mountains like the Dominican Republic, that's what can really hurt a system. Tropical
Top tonight, we want to tell you about the latest information.
Yes, and most importantly, students across South Florida will not have their first day of school tomorrow. Miami-Dade and Broward schools are closed for the day tomorrow. Monroe County schools are closed tomorrow and Tuesday.
Now, as for public transportation, Miami-Dade and Broward counties are continuing with normal operations, weather permitting, that is.
Trash collection, you should know, is still scheduled. It is on in both Miami-Dade and Broward counties.
Meanwhile, courts in Miami-Dade County are closed, while courts in Broward will remain closed after 12 noon tomorrow.
And Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport and Miami International, as you see there, both remain open. Any new information that comes in on closures for tomorrow will be right there along the bottom of your screen. But right now, we do want to bring you the very latest on Fay. The 11 o'clock advisory came out just moments ago.
Yes, it did. Our chief meteorologist, Trent Eriks, here with hurricane specialist Max Mayfield. They're watching it all closely. Let's get us started with Trent.
Yeah, Charles and Lori, watching Fay tonight. The storm is beginning to slow down. It is still south of the island of Cuba, and you can see on the enhanced satellite imagery here, the bright red and orange, that's the cold cloud tops where the most intense showers and thunderstorms are, trying to regain around what is the center of circulation. Earlier today, rain bands moved across South Florida, so we already felt the extreme northern fringes of Fay. One of the changes with the 11 o'clock advisory here, there is now a tropical storm warning for the Florida Keys from Craig Key Key to Ocean Reef. Earlier today, this warning stopped at Craig Key and extended to the south, or to the west rather, here to the Dry Tortugas, but now it encompasses all the keys just south of Ocean Reef, Miami-Dade, Broward, all the way up to Jupiter Inlet, including Lake Okeechobee. Remainder of tropical storm watch. There is a hurricane watch from south of Ocean Reef all the way to the Dry Tortugas up the Florida west coast towards Tarpon Springs, just north of Tampa. Here's the latest 11 o'clock information. Winds still at 50 miles per hour, gusting to 65. It's a tropical storm just off the southern shore of Cuba, pressured at 1,001 millibars. Movement now is northwest, so we're starting to see a little change here at 10 miles per hour. In the forecast track, it has shifted just ever so slightly. By 8 p.m. on Monday, a tropical storm here just off the coast. Whenever you see that icon with the hollow center, that's a tropical storm, or you can follow the blue line there. But by this point on, a Category 1 hurricane by 8 a.m. on Tuesday, and this approach is slower than the forecast track earlier today. From this point on, we continue by 8 p.m. on Tuesday as a Cat 1 hurricane somewhere here on the southwestern coast of Florida before heading inland here as a tropical storm by 8 p.m. on Wednesday, and then turning into a tropical depression in the southeast on Thursday. So a little bit slower and a little bit more of an adjustment. I want to go to hurricane specialist Max Mayfield now to talk about this and why the Hurricane Center has made just a couple of slight changes with the computer models.
And I'd like to show these computer models occasionally. We'll take a look here, and we can see some of the better models. We're not going to show all of these, but we can see some that the Hurricane Center is looking at, and you can see some of the tracks are actually from very respectable models to the right of the actual forecast from the Hurricane Center, and some are to the left of the forecast. So there's still some different scenarios that can play out here. We just show that to make sure that people understand that there's just not one single possibility that could occur here. Exactly when this turn to the north occurs will make all the difference in the world on the actual track and the landfall point eventually here. Looking at the wind field, this again, the yellow is the tropical storm force winds in here. And as Trent said, it has slowed down. In fact, the 8 p.m. position now is about where the 8 a.m. position was earlier. So it's going to be slower now. The tropical storm force winds will likely not get into the Keys until tomorrow afternoon now instead of tomorrow morning. And you can see that the storm force winds are coming over a portion of the peninsula there Tuesday evening here west of Fort Myers somewhere, and then on up to the north beyond that. So if there's a perfect forecast here, those tropical storm force winds will still stay west of the populated areas of Miami-Dade and Broward County and impact primarily the Keys. Again, we know they can't be perfect, and if we take a look at the satellite loop here, I want to be real sure that we understand that the center is over here on the edge, right where that heavy thunderstorm cluster is there. Most of the weather is really on the east side, and I want to remind us back in 1999 with Irene. Some of you will remember that, and there were a lot of people that were surprised. We were forecasting it to move from the southwest to northeast over the peninsula, forecasting a lot of rain, and yet a lot of people said they were very, very surprised. So even though the center of Fay is forecast to go to the west of us, looking at the picture, you can see that most of the weather and the wind is on the east side here. The report written on Irene, it says that people were surprised and we did not adequately convey the message to the public that track forecasts are not exact. We've been saying that over and over. Hurricanes are not a point but cover a broad area. We've been saying that over and over. And serious effects usually extend hundreds of miles from the center. So I just don't want anybody to be surprised, especially on Monday evening and during the day Tuesday up here in Miami-Dade, Broward County, that we really get some heavy rains and some heavier winds too.
All right, Max, so looking at this system, it slowed down a little bit. We have a new tropical storm warning for parts of the Keys. Just to recap a few things in the advisory. So Charles and Lori, with this slower approach, we're going to be back in a few moments to tell you exactly what to expect at each location.
La tribu de indios Miccosukee de la Florida.
Bueno, vamos a repasar una vez más lo que está ocurriendo con Fay, la trayectoria proyectada, la intensidad de los vientos que se pueden anticipar en diferentes puntos y ese análisis ciudad por ciudad a través del sur de la Florida. Como ven, el sistema tratando de organizarse, qué trabajo le ha costado y qué bueno que le haya costado tanto trabajo. Vientos de solo 50 millas por hora esta noche en un rumbo que al momento es hacia el noroeste, luego debe girar hacia el norte. Todo esto se anticipaba. Lo que sí es que el Centro Nacional de Huracanes terminó ajustando un poquito más hacia la izquierda, un poquito más hacia el oeste esa trayectoria proyectada, dado que llevaba tan buen impulso, digamos, hacia el oeste, y ese giro hacia el norte es uno que lo está haciendo en forma bastante gradual, y eso es favorable para nosotros. También es favorable para la zona de los Cayos, ya que parece que pasará bastante al oeste de Cayo Hueso, y bueno, no tan favorable para puntos más al norte en la Florida, donde ahora tal parece van a tener que lidiar con algún huracán acercándose para el día martes. Ojalá que no sea más allá que un huracán de categoría 1. En cuanto a la probabilidad de ver vientos e intensidad de tormenta, esto es algo que hemos estado presentando desde el día de ayer.
We are still looking at the system. It looks a little ragged over the Caribbean Sea. What are you potential that this could organize a little more before it makes landfall over Cuba?
Both observations seem to be right. The system is not very well organized. It looks like the center is probably on the western side of this large cloud mass. We'll have another reconnaissance aircraft in the area in a few hours to pin that down. At this point, it looks like because it's relatively poorly organized, that's actually good news for us. But there are two periods where intensification could occur. One is in the next 6 to 12 hours until the center makes landfall in Cuba. And then after it emerges to the north, Straits of Florida, extreme southeastern part of the Gulf of Mexico, there could be some strengthening as the center approaches or moves just to the west of the lower Florida Keys.
All right, thank you very much, Ed, for that explanation. It helps us out a lot. Thank you, as usual, for all your help. All right, let's
away with heavy rain and winds last night.
Now here's a live look at Duval Street in Key West. Pretty quiet this morning. Looks relatively dry, although they have felt some rain earlier today. The storm apparently heading there next, packing a mighty punch, and the weather is expected to get worse this morning. The latest advisory was out about an hour ago.
So let's get straight to CBS 4 meteorologist Craig Setzer. And is Fay strengthening? What's our immediate concern? All those thunderstorms coming our way?
Yeah, the immediate concern is that not only is there a tremendous amount of rain coming our way, but there's wind coming our way. And the National Hurricane Center said they may have to adjust their track to the right still, because right now the center is over Cuba, and when it gets back into the Straits of Florida, it may reform to a different position. So it's going to be very touch and go through the morning hours. But one thing we know for sure, there is a tremendous amount of rain headed for South Florida, as well as strong winds eventually getting to South Florida. The winds speeds are starting to pick up, and the rain's already been heavy, as we've seen in the Keys. Marathon, over an inch of rain already, and I think 5 to 10 inches of rain, widespread rain, is not out of the question in South Florida. So that's a look at radar, and you can see all the rain working its way to the north. Here's radar satellite starting at 11:45 p.m. last night. There was the center. Now, this is what I want you to pay attention to with this storm. It is a very lopsided storm. The center is down here. All of the bad weather is on the northeast half of it. So even though the center, which is what we track and what the cone follows, is here, all the bad weather is over to the right of it. And so as that center comes to the north, all of this bad weather has to go over us, and it's going to take some time because that extends at least 100 miles to the south, at least 150 miles to the south. So we've got a long duration event getting ready to get going here. In fact, in parts of South Florida, it's already going. 5 a.m. advisory, 50-mile-an-hour winds. So technically not strengthening, but I think not only is the wind going to be an issue here, it's going to be the flooding and the flood threat. North-northwest on the motion at 12, 155 miles to the south-southeast of Key West. Here's the future track. Remember, this is a lopsided storm, so there's the cone going up the west coast of Florida, but what we're watching is that bad weather on the east side of the cone. In fact, let's look at it this way. Here we are in South Florida. There's the center. Now, this is the tropical storm force winds, but as hurricane hunters are flying around, it looks like those are starting to expand out, and this is all the bad weather here. So what I'm going to do is move the winds right up the center of the cone and move all the bad weather with it. And what you'll see is that through the morning hours, and we'll put a clock on here, you can see the bad weather just continues. It moves in. We're through the afternoon now. Here come the stronger winds. We're through the night now. Here are the strong winds. Here we're overnight now tonight. Strong winds and rain. Here we are tomorrow at noon, even 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Still windy and still quite stormy. And things may not improve until we get into tomorrow night. So this is once again a long duration flood event with very strong winds and not a good situation for South Florida by any means based on what I am looking at.
Slight breeze coming through, and we've had some rain off and on, but nothing really too serious at this point. You can see here on Duval Street all very quiet. A lot of the businesses have shuttered up, or I'd say actually about maybe 30% or so here on Duval Street have put the shutters up, and that's a good thing because later on today it's going to start to get nasty, and by that time it'll be too late. Now, as far as tourists, as we said, tourists were ordered to evacuate
from the Florida Keys. A lot of them have done so, and for those who still want to leave this morning, time is running out. With the streets cleared of most tourists here in Key West, it's time to wait and watch to see what Fay will do. More businesses have put up shutters. For some here, memories of Wilma got them moving.
Well, that was a good reminder of, just to get as prepared as you can get, more so than you may think you need.
The time has pretty much come and gone for anyone who hopes of getting a flight out. At this point, the airport is set to close around 10 this morning. That means for people who still want to leave, they have to make the 150-mile drive out of the Keys.
Get out, so we're going to go up to Miami.
Driving.
Yeah, driving, and then try to get a flight from Miami.
Keys officials say if people still plan to drive out, they should be on the road before 10 this morning. After that, it could get dangerous.
Do not wait. Start now. We're going to do our best to get everybody out here.
For those staying, a shelter has been set up at Key West High School. It's not exactly a luxury hotel, but for those who don't feel safe, it's an option. So far, there have not been many takers. After the rain and wind passes, folks here are hoping to have the welcome mat back out as soon as possible.
If you have reservations to visit this beautiful city or the Florida Keys, keep them. I want to let you know that we will work diligently to make sure that Key West is ready for your stay.
All right, something we can't stress enough for those people who still want to drive out of the Florida Keys, you had better get going and do it quickly. It's going to get to the point where that wind is going to start to come through, and then it's going to be very dangerous as you're going. I mean, just imagine trying to go across a 7-mile bridge with strong winds coming at you, and especially for those folks who have those high-profile vehicles, the campers and things like that. As far as the airport here, as we said, it's expected to close around 10 o'clock this morning. What they do there is when the winds hit a certain speed, that's when they finally close it down. And considering that in Key West there's only small planes and jets that fly into here, they usually try and close that down as early as possible, or earlier than other airports might. Now, if you want some more information from Key West specifically, there's a rumor control hotline, an information line that's set up. That number is 305-809-1108. We're live in Key West. I'm Ted Scouten, CBS 4 News this morning.
Thanks, Ted. We turn now to Florida City, where the weather is expected to deteriorate quickly.
CBS 4's Lee Davalos is live there with how things are shaping up. Lee, good morning. What's the situation there?
Good morning, Jim and Cynthia. Well, so far weather-wise, it's getting a little windy, and we've already felt a few sprinkles. And as you can see behind me here on US 1, so far it is smooth sailing traffic-wise, but as the morning wears on, we're sure to see that change and see more of what we saw yesterday. Traffic on US 1 slowing down to a crawl as tourists packed up and evacuated the Keys. A steady stream of traffic all day long heading north out of the Keys as part of the mandatory evacuation order. Now throughout the day it was bumper to bumper traffic, thinning out and making a smoother ride by late Sunday night. Now for those stuck in the traffic though, it did take several hours to just get to US 1 in Florida City from the Keys.
We drive 3 hours to arrive from Key Largo.
In Layton, we just sat still for 10, 15 minutes at a time. You'd move ahead, just at an idle speed, for 100 feet at a time, and you'd stop for another couple minutes. It was pretty bad for a while.
All right, what's your name?
Now, best advice now is the earlier the better if you are still in the Keys to get an early start, because the weather as well as the traffic is expected to deteriorate as the morning wears on. We're live in Florida City. Lee Davalos, CBS 4 News this morning.
The weather's going to go down, and it's not going to improve a whole lot as opposed to that sometimes squally weather we see. This looks pretty serious and pretty constant all the way back south to Cuba. Here's a wider view right now. They're starting at 6 a.m. this morning, actually 12:15 a.m. this morning. There's the center. Here's the precipitation. Now, what I want you to focus on is not the center. The center's here. What we're looking at is the big area of thunderstorms that precede the center. Now, the Hurricane Center always tracks that little position right there, and their cone forecast is for that position there. But look at all the rain, all the bad weather, the strong winds are to the east of the center. So as this comes to the north, all of this bad weather comes north with it, and it comes right over South Florida, and it's going to be a long duration, heavy rain event with very strong winds building as the day goes on and through the night tonight.
Strength now. Winds are sustained at 60 miles per hour, gusting up to 70, which is just under hurricane strength.
The movement is still slow out of the north-northwest at 12 miles per hour, moving to the north-northwest at 12, I should say. The pressure is now down to 1,002 millibars. So again, we've seen some strengthening with Fay as it now is making its way offshore back out over portions of the Florida Strait. So if you're plotting this at home, 23.2 north, 81.2 west, this latest advisory has just...
So still 14 miles per hour shy of gaining hurricane status. It's moving north-northwest at 12 miles per hour, about 101 miles south-southeast of Key West.
7's Richard Jordan live in Islamorada, and he's been feeling some of the effects of Fay all morning long. Richard?
Hey, Christina, having a little trouble hearing you. This wind is pretty deafening right now. This is the strongest wind we've been seeing all morning long, and it just keeps getting stronger and stronger. Just take a look out on the open water. The tide is getting higher, cresting just over these rocks, and it's getting pretty choppy out there. This is probably the wake-up call that Florida Governor Charlie Crist was talking about yesterday. He didn't want residents to get complacent thinking that Fay was just a minimal storm, just a tropical storm, maybe just a Category 1 hurricane. He wanted residents here in the Florida Keys to take this seriously and really get prepared to put shutters on their homes, to get the basics, make sure they stocked up on their water, ice, batteries, everything that they might need. But at this point, as we're beginning to feel the first effects, it's also time for residents to come up with a game plan. They need to know where they might go in case this storm really gets bad and they are forced to evacuate. At this point, there is no evacuation for residents in the Florida Keys. The evacuation was for tourists and visitors. Many of them, about 25,000, headed out yesterday. They're long gone now, probably pretty happy that they're missing this because this is certainly no vacation. We're on a beach just along a resort, and we haven't seen a single soul out here. Just actually earlier this morning, we did see a couple that was trying to take a walk and watch the sunrise. That didn't happen. We still haven't seen the sun ourselves. So many people now bracing for this storm, beginning to feel the first effects of Fay, and more than likely taking it very serious. We're live in Islamorada. Richard Jordan, 7 News.
All right, Richard, and our continue kind of blocking everything off over the Gulf, but we also have a trough that's moving down now. So you might have noticed that that track has gone a little bit from more westerly, northwesterly, taking that steer to the north. But here's the broad picture of Fay. We now have those winds to 60 miles per hour. Fortunately, Fay is the only game in town. You can see how quiet the rest of the Gulf, the Caribbean is, and even as we get well off the Atlantic, there's one little wave way off in the Atlantic that we won't have to worry about for quite some time. So as we take a closer look at Fay and some of those steering influences, it is that trough that we're going to see. And you can see that the center of the storm and the convection aren't quite what we call co-located or located together. Once this gets over water, this will start reorganizing a little bit more. But this trough is coming down, and with that, that's going to kind of make that steer a little bit more to the north and eventually even to the northeast. That also, unfortunately, might block some of that moisture that some of the southeast would like to see out of this storm. Moisture is the big thing with this storm. It's already caused a lot of rain, and rain is going to be the big event with this. So if you're headed out somewhere like Marathon, Florida this morning, you're already dealing with the rain on the roads. Some of those bands have been heavy. Occasionally these storms, as they interact with land, are able to spin off things like tornadoes. We already saw one example of that this morning, or at least a Doppler indicated tornado. And with the rain, Key West Airport, the last flight out of there has now gone. This will be closed until conditions improve, and you might see some other delays. But as this continues up to the north and takes that track that we were just talking about, depends on how long this is over land as to how much this is able to intensify. The longer this heads over land before steering inland, the more that likely this is going to be a minimal level hurricane as it moves in. But still, rain is really the big event here.
Continue to move closer and closer to us. A new hurricane hunter plane is moving in right now. Let me punch that up and you can see. Now he is going to be investigating, looking to see if he can find the center and the strength of the center. And I'll slow it down there so you can see the wind speeds that he is reporting there. And basically, so far on the south side of the system, it looks like some of the wind speeds are rather light. So the thinking would be, based on that hurricane hunter moving in there, that some of the strongest winds are on the front side of this, and that means that the weather is going to be going down through the Keys as the morning goes on. Probably you need to be where you're going to be in the middle Keys and be where you need to be soon in the lower Keys and the upper Keys. And then farther to the north in Miami-Dade and Broward, the thinking is that tropical storm force winds are going to be arriving later this afternoon and through the evening. So by this afternoon in Miami-Dade, I think you want to be where you're going to be, and in Broward, also by late this afternoon, get to a place where you can settle down and stay put for the duration of the storm. The worst of the storm, now this is a lopsided storm, so the issues are it's not where the center is, but it's where the bad weather is. If you look here, you can see there is the center now on the north coast of Cuba, but look at all the bad weather that stretches up north and east of the center, and as that center comes to the north, it's going to carry all of that bad weather with it. And as we get closer and closer to the center, that's where the winds will continue to increase, and so that's what we're planning for this afternoon. Once again, a double-sided threat here, not only the wind event for South Florida, but also the heavy rain event, a prolonged heavy rain event of widespread 5 to 10-inch rains are possible, and the National Weather Service here in Miami even saying we could even see some isolated amounts up to 12 inches, a foot of rain over a week.
Tropical Storm Fay already deadly this morning. It is headed towards Florida and possibly toward hurricane strength. The storm killed several people on its rampage through the Caribbean, and right now it is plowing toward the Florida Keys. Residents there boarding up and sometimes getting out. Thousands of tourists and residents are scrambling to evacuate the Keys. Forecasters warn Fay could reach hurricane strength by late tonight. And for those who want to leave, this is the time. CNN is your hurricane headquarters. Our Jackie Jarris is tracking Tropical Storm Fay now in the Weather Center, and she is joining us. Hi there, Jackie. Any changes to talk about immediately?
You know, nothing major. It's over the Florida Straits now, and so it's over that open water where the temperatures in this area, believe it or not, Heidi, we're talking like 87 degrees. That's like bath water, and when we have water temperatures that warm, we've got a great potential for strengthening and further development. There's a little bit of shear on the north side of the storm and also a little bit of dry air that it's encountering, but I don't think it's enough that it's going to prevent it from strengthening, and we're likely going to be seeing hurricane status later today or possibly into the overnight hours. It's still a little bit unbalanced overall. You can see the center of circulation in this area here north of Cuba, but look at all the rain, the showers and thunder showers that have been hitting South Florida all morning long. The rain heaviest up towards West Palm Beach, moving up the I-95 corridor towards Port St. Lucie area. And keep in mind that we do have the threat for some isolated tornadoes with us today as well. The wind speeds are slowly but steadily beginning to pick up, and we're getting wind gust reports, especially across the Keys from Marathon on down towards Key West, around 30 miles per hour. So expect those to continue to increase throughout the day today. Forecast track has it pulling a little bit more up to the north about 12 to 24 hours from now, paralleling the coast and then making a turn in. But look at that cone of uncertainty, Heidi. Really, everybody on the West Coast needs to pay attention because any little wobble or bobble certainly changes this ball game pretty significantly.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jackie, we'll check back in with you a little bit later on. Thank you. Cuba taking the full force of Tropical Storm Fay this morning. CNN's Havana Bureau Chief Morgan Neal is there.
Tropical Storm Fay picked up momentum Sunday, hitting Cuba's southern coast with gusty winds and heavy rains as it pushed and swirled closer to the island. Hurricane watches were posted along much of Cuba's central and western coast, including Havana, as the storm picked up strength. Already, Fay has left at least 5 people dead in its wake after battering Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Nearly 12,000 people were evacuated in the Dominican Republic, and power was cut to some 15,000 homes, according to local reports. Its target now, the Florida Straits, with predictions it could reach hurricane strength as it pushes back over water.
The main threats with Fay, as the National Hurricane Center and the State Emergency Response Team diagnoses right now are tornadoes and flooding.
Forecasters said the storm could hit the Florida Keys Monday night. In the Keys, schools are closed, tourists are being urged to leave, and shelters are being opened. The governor's declared a state of emergency, and 9,000 Florida National Guard troops are at the ready.
Florida is prepared, and we are ready, and we'll be vigilant.
Residents rushed to prepare for the incoming storm, buying plywood, batteries, generators, and candles. In some areas, water sold out within hours of stores opening. And out in the Gulf of Mexico, oil companies like Shell are already pulling workers off offshore platforms, preparing for Fay's arrival. Back here in Cuba, the island must now start to deal with the damage.
And now, Heidi, reports of that damage have been relatively light. There has been some flooding in the course of this storm, some roofs blown off, but Cuba's chief meteorologist just came and gave a report recently in which he said it appears that Cuba has escaped this one relatively unscathed.
All right, very good. We sure do appreciate that. Live from Havana, Cuba, Morgan Neal for us this morning. Thank you.
Throughout the rest of the day in South Florida and the Keys.
Well, as you pointed out in the Keys right now, we have a very strong rain band moving through the area, and that's where the initial potential, I guess, for the isolated tornadoes is going to exist. But as the center keeps getting closer and more rain bands form and come up across South Florida into the mainland, into Miami-Dade, and eventually on up into Broward, similar conditions, maybe less of the sustained wind, but certainly gusty winds to tropical storm force, torrential rain, and the isolated tornado threat is there.
Okay, and real quickly, how concerned are you about a severe flooding situation developing over South Florida on the east side of the storm?
Well, at the present time, if we keep moving at 10 miles an hour or a little greater, I think it'll be we will have a transportation issue where we get flooding that causes problem with driving, but you need the storm to slow down or stall to get the excessive rains that lead to severe flooding.
Okay, Bill Reed, Director of the National Hurricane Center, will be checking in with you throughout the day. The storm is really impacting parts of our area. We want to get up and close and see what's actually occurring. We're starting in the middle and lower Keys, and as we saw George Estevez live down there a little while ago, this is some of the worst weather associated with Fay in our area. This is actually the center of the storm right in this vicinity, so just on the northern edge of that center, that's some of the most intense areas of rain and wind right now. And you'll see on your screen a tornado watch is now in effect for all of South Florida and the Keys for the duration of this storm event. And again, we are in the northern and eastern side of the storm, and that's the most vulnerable area for potentially seeing tornadoes with this kind of situation. Here's the wider view and a lot of weather over the Atlantic waters. This is probably going to be the strongest band that's going to affect Metro Miami-Dade and Broward thus far in the storm. Again, that's going to be rotated into Miami-Dade over the next hour or two, and then eventually spreading up into portions of Broward County. A little closer in view here on Broward shows that we've had a heavy rain band move through central and western Miami-Dade in the past half hour. Now that is coming through Broward County, and it looks like it's right along 595 and south of there through Davie and Miramar and Hollywood, and some pretty good downpours in the downtown Fort Lauderdale as well.
Happening now officially with Tropical Storm Fay. We have a tornado watch out that's out till 11 o'clock this evening across South Florida here. Of course, whenever you have a landfalling tropical system, you always expect at least a few tornadoes. Unfortunately, these are quick spin-up tornadoes. That's the good side. The downside is that they tend to develop so quickly and dissipate just as fast that there's usually very little warning time here, folks. So do keep that in mind with deteriorating weather. Boy, look how the rain has engulfed the Keys. It is raining cats and dogs, so to speak, there in the Keys right now. And very heavy rain spreading up through Miami-Dade County. And once the rain starts, it's going to continue throughout the rest of the day, folks. All right, let's show you the infrared satellite shot here because the center of circulation is now back over the Florida Straits. And note the blow-up of convection here coming through the Keys. So some nasty weather coming up through the Keys for the remainder of the afternoon. I also want you to note the asymmetrical shape of the storm, how the bulk of the thunderstorm activity is to the east of the center of circulation. That could have an impact on the forecast for those of you here in Florida. Talk more about that in a second. So as of the 11 o'clock advisory, winds were still at 60 miles an hour. The movement was off to the northwest at 13, north-northwest, and the barometric pressure holding at about 1,003 millibars.
Now, looking at a system, we are looking at Fay as it lifts very close to the lower Keys. Tell us about what our threat is for residents of the lower Keys.
Well, there's a very strong rain band rotating around the top of the center of Fay, and very heavy rains, gusty winds to tropical storm force with gusts to 60 miles an hour are possible with those. There's also a threat of isolated tornadoes in some of the cells within that line, and of course a very torrential rain. So they're getting, the brunt of the blow right now, and will for the next couple of hours. Once the center goes past, the lower Keys will probably see a break in the weather, but there's still bands of heavy thunderstorms that will move over the portions of the middle Keys and upper Keys after it goes past.
And Bill, it does look like the system is still forecast to move in that general northward track. How is that going to impact our weather here along the southeast coast of Florida?
Well, I would imagine overnight tonight as the center moves north from the Keys into the Gulf of Mexico off the west coast of Florida, that we'll continue to get the bands of heavy rain with squally weather, probably gusts to tropical storm force primarily within those rain bands, and of course the threat of tornadoes.
So we'll continue to watch the radar obviously very closely as we continue throughout the rest of the day. You mentioned as we look out some pictures coming our way from
everyone. We continue to track Tropical Storm Fay as it delivers a lot of rainfall from the Florida Keys northward. So South Florida getting hit pretty hard right now in terms of the rain. And officially, a landfall being declared as far as the center of this storm is concerned. 3 p.m. Eastern time at Key West, Florida. Landfall. We've got a lot more ahead on Fay. Samantha standing by with that.
That's right. Boy, when you talk about the center, Betty, it is kind of hard to find an exact center. It's kind of stacked over at an angle like this instead of directly up and down. So we do have the max sustained winds up around 60 miles per hour as it moves to the north-northwest. And as Betty said, officially it made landfall at 3:20 East Coast time. Okay.
And if you look at these statistics, and these come from the last advisory, which was issued at 2 p.m., you can see the lat lawn there. It's actually, as you said, that already the center moved over Key West. It's really not an eye, but the center of the circulation did move right over Key West. The maximum sustained winds on the last advisory were 60 miles per hour with gusts of 70 miles per hour. So a strong tropical storm, but not a hurricane. Moving to the north-northwest at 14 miles per hour. I'd expect to slow down a little bit here. On the advisory, the pressure was 1,002 millibars. I just looked at the last Hurricane Hunter reconnaissance report here, and it's down, looks like 1 millibar, but no significant change there. If we look at the cone, and I'm going to show this, but don't ever want to show it without an explanation here. Now, this is the track, has it coming over the Keys and up here onto the southwest Florida coast, and then moving a little bit slower as it moves over the peninsula, and this next advisory may slow it down a little bit even more here. We've had a lot of emails from people, and they're saying, look at the cone. We're out of the cone here in Miami-Dade, Broward County. Well, remember, this cone is only of value to tell us the most likely area where the center of the tropical storm is going to go. So you have to know how to use this. This says nothing about the intensity, nothing about the size of the hurricane, and it's helpful to know where the center is going to go, but that's about it here. That's why we like to show the wind field, and I think the most important thing to look at here is that the tropical storm force winds go out about 115 miles, especially on the eastern semicircle here. And that includes, should be moving over Miami-Dade, Broward County as it continues on up the state like that. So this storm is going to be impacting the entire Florida Peninsula before it's all said and done here. Looking at the satellite imagery, it's interesting here, just the last hour or so, we've had a blow up of thunderstorm activity near the center, near and just north of the center. So it's trying to get better developed here, but it's really going to be running out of time, and conditions will definitely be improving here in the lower Florida Keys, and in fact throughout the Florida Keys this evening here. Then the focus will shift towards the Florida Peninsula. Trent?
Yeah, Max, looking at what we've got right now and where Fay has officially made landfall in Key West, what type of changes can we expect with that 5 o'clock advisory based on your experience in the past?
Many requests coming in from all the different Florida media outlets on Fay. We're going to have to wait our time, and we're going to talk during that time about what's going on in South Florida. As we take a live look at the radar, there are 2 distinct batches of some incredibly heavy rainfall, and where you see that bowing, a shape that looks like almost like a crescent, especially up toward Deerfield Beach and Pompano Beach, that's an area you have to watch out for some very strong winds lifting up toward Parkland and Coral Springs, Deerfield Beach, then into Palm Beach County very quickly. Also a line of heavy showers and storms basically along Tamiami Trail out toward Miccosukee, diving back down to Allen Sweetwater, then back up I'll tell you what, we're going to see a good 15 to 20 minutes soaking with some gusty winds in downtown Miami, South Beach, Miami Beach, down US 1, almost to about, it looks like Pinecrest, and that's going to lift off to the north rapidly, but we have some very heavy rainfall heading right over top of downtown Miami as we speak, and we'll bring it out even wider to include the Florida Keys with some light to moderate rain showers. You're getting the break right now. It hasn't rained in Key West for about 2 hours. Marathon, some light rain showers, but the heaviest rain by far into portions of Miami and into Fort Lauderdale. National Hurricane Center Director Bill Reed is standing by live at your office there. Bill, Fay is no longer forecast to become a hurricane. Does that change anything in our forecast here in South Florida over the next 24 hours?
Well, it's been a long day, Paul, but first a little clarification. One of the quirks in our the time steps to where we put out the specific numbers for the forecast, we have it not quite a hurricane in 12 hours, but in 24 hours it's over land, so it'll have weakened some. In between there, we still expect that the storm could reach right up to the hurricane threshold, so we are expecting Tropical Storm Fay to intensify to a minimal Category 1 hurricane.
Thanks for the clarification on that, Bill. For the next 24 hours down here, we're watching these rain bands one by one march from the Keys into Miami-Dade, into Broward. When those rain bands pass by, what should folks expect here? Because it may not have rained for the previous 30 minutes. And they might be like, oh, well, there's nothing here. It's over. What can they expect as these rain bands blow on by?
Well, the strong gusty winds, and especially if Fay continues on the trend that we're seeing, it looks like it's gaining some strength and organization. It'll give our closest point of approach as it passes by off the west coast of Florida. We'll be in the potential gradient for the tropical storm force winds. So our strongest winds should be overnight tonight, in the early morning tomorrow with those rain bands as they pass.
And this is a very asymmetric system. We're not seeing anything on the western side of this. See if you could explain to our viewers why all the activity is on our side of the storm with very, very little going on the western side, which frankly we don't care about, but it's interesting nonetheless.
That's true. A lot of times in a not fully developed tropical cyclone, they're not fully centric, and in this case, the better dynamics and outflow that help the thunderstorms develop, and moisture probably plays a role. The deeper moisture has been on the east side of the area of lowest pressure. Though in the last several hours, we've seen that one rain band that went through the Keys is now wrapping around where the low pressure center is, and there are other showers showing up south of that center, which to me indicates that we may be seeing some of the better organization that we've been anticipating.
We're looking at that on the radar right now, Bill. For folks who, it's the evening, it's dark, they can't exactly see what's going on in the sky. There should be no sense of security going into tonight that these rain bands are going to stop. It looks like it's going to be an all-night event into tomorrow, correct?
That's correct, and my advice there is to do exactly what I plan to do, which is once I get off this evening and turn it over to Ed Rappaport, is I'm driving home, parking the car, and staying inside.
I'm surprised they let you leave, Bill.
Well, you want somebody that's still fresh and can talk intelligently. Give me a few more hours of this and I'd be babbling.
I'm not to believe I'm starting to babble, so. Thanks, Bill. Bill Gray, director of the, Bill Reed. See, I'm already starting. Bill Reed, director of the National Hurricane Center. There's a different hurricane guy, Bill Gray, and it's absolutely not you. Wouldn't want to accuse you of that. So that's what we have going.
251. Tenemos cobertura de equipo y comenzamos con nuestro experto en huracanes, John Morales. Adelante, John.
Bueno, obviamente muchísimo de qué hablar durante la tarde de hoy porque parte del mal tiempo, yo diría la mayoría del mal tiempo asociada a esta tormenta, ya ha estado pasando sobre los condados Miami-Dade y Broward y actualmente acaba de expirar un aviso de tornado que estaba en vigor para partes del condado Miami-Dade debido a un tornado que había estado pasando desde el área de Golden Glades, y eso fue una llamada que recibimos aquí en Telemundo 51 de un televidente que había una nube tipo embudo cerca de la zona del Golden Glades Interchange, ahí en donde se empata la 95 con la 826, y se movió hacia el aeropuerto North Perry en el sur del condado Broward. El radar Doppler 51 les va a mostrar la precipitación y las intensas bandas de lluvia asociadas a Fay mientras se mueve hacia el norte. Las bandas más intensas, bueno, obviamente por aquí hay una, y esa es la que pasó por la zona que les acabo de indicar, por la zona cercana al Golden Glades Interchange. Ya está en el área del condado Broward. Mientras tanto, aquí hay otra entrando a la parte extrema sur de la península por el área de Flamingo. Esa también se está moviendo hacia el norte. Vamos a acercarnos a la zona de lluvia más fuerte donde posiblemente todavía exista un tornado, aunque repito, el aviso de tornado acaba de expirar, pero en todo caso, pues la precipitación más intensa está entre Tamarack, Sunrise, en este sector, moviéndose, repito, hacia el área, hacia el norte y más al sur. Como pueden apreciar, hay lluvias también en la zona de Miami Lakes hasta el área de Opa-locka. Por cierto, el centro de esta tormenta tropical está ya cerca y justo al norte del área de Cayo Hueso, el centro de la tormenta moviéndose hacia el norte-noroeste a razón de unas 12 millas por hora. También pueden ver en esta imagen las ráfagas más fuertes que se están experimentando a través del área, incluyendo 46 millas por hora en Cayo Maratón y hasta unas 37 millas por hora dentro del condado Broward, específicamente en el área de Fort Lauderdale. Vamos a ver la imagen de satélite de Fay esta tarde y entonces hablamos todo lo que es la posición de las 5 de la tarde, la proyección de cómo se va a estar comportando en las próximas horas. Fay ha sido un sistema que, como saben, le ha costado mucho trabajo fortalecerse y se mantiene esta tarde con vientos de apenas 60 millas por hora. El viento máximo sostenido de Fay es de 60 millas por hora. Es una tormenta asimétrica. Todo el mal tiempo está en el semicírculo derecho de la tormenta, mientras esta se va moviendo hacia el norte-noroeste, habiendo pasado como a las 3 de la tarde por el área de Boca Chica y Cayo Hueso, en la parte extrema baja de los Cayos, y ya está en la bahía de la Florida y dentro del Golfo de México. Las estadísticas, digamos, de las 5 de la tarde, la latitud, la longitud la tienen en pantalla. Esta posición, por cierto, si la ponen en un mapa, es cerca y justo al norte de Cayo Hueso, 24.6 norte y 81.9 grados oeste. Traslación norte-noroeste, 12 millas por hora, vientos máximos 60 millas por hora. Ahora noten que la presión barométrica ha empezado a bajar. 998 milibaras, estaba en 1002 milibaras esta tarde. O sea que Fay, tal parece, está en un proceso de intensificación. Y de 60 millas por hora pudiera pasar a ser una tormenta más fuerte en las próximas horas mientras sigue rumbo, tal parece, hacia la costa suroccidental de la península floridana, y precisamente por ahí es que la tienen entrando en el Centro Nacional de Huracanes por esa región.
Get back to the news, but when you're in that kind of a situation where you're going to have storm after storm after storm, you got to stay with this stuff, because if you're going to be out there anywhere for any reason tonight, there's a chance you can get knocked over by some of these winds, and it'll be a dangerous night to be outdoors, even though it's not a hurricane. Let's just call this a significant severe weather event. That's what we're tracking right now. Yes, it's a tropical storm. It's not a hurricane, but it has some perils. It has some dangers of its own because of the way the whole thing is configured. All the bad weather is near and east of the center, and it is a tropical system. So anything that a storm would produce would be multiplied 3 and 4 times. That is the rain, the tornadoes, the wind. Anytime it's a tropical dynamic to a system, there's always the potential for far worse weather than you would have in a localized thunderstorm. That's why this is such an important weather event, is because you have a tendency to look at this and say, well, it's not Wilma, it's not Katrina, it's not Irene, it's not Opal. We know it's not, but it is still a significant severe weather event that we are tracking from outer space tonight, and also via reconnaissance aircraft and also on the ground.
Then gradual improvement throughout the day tomorrow and into Wednesday. Here is the center of Fay right now. That's Naples, so it's about 50 or 60 miles south of Naples and basically paralleling the coast. It looks like it's just going to glide right into the southwest coastline over the next 4 to 5 hours. Here we are on the eastern side of things, and the rain has really been picking up again over the last hour, hour and a half. The heaviest rain right now is across Broward County. Sheets of rain moving through central Broward, generally along and south of 595, and that extends all the way down to the Dade County line.
Latest on its current winds and momentum now with Paul.
Yes, Fay's been around a while. We were talking about it last week. I think we might talk about it into the end of this week. So that's why we're concerned of it. Again, the latest coordinates as of 11 p.m. if you're tracking it. Sustained winds 60 miles per hour moving on towards the north at 9 miles per hour. The pressure has slowly decreased. Typically, as the pressure drops, the winds go up, but the winds have been staying the same. But it's still a concern because we're still seeing some thunderstorm or some convection activity around now the west and northwest side of that center, something we haven't really seen a whole lot of today. So we still could see this system strengthen, a storm strengthen, perhaps to a stronger tropical storm, perhaps even a Category 1 hurricane before landfall. Probably sometime, say, between 5 and 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, somewhere on the southwest Texas coast. I show you this because you can see the cloud field with this system moving on to north and even central Florida here. So perhaps some of those cloud bands moving on through Ocala, even Gainesville, Florida, those clouds you see overhead, well, perhaps obscuring the moonlight tonight, from Tropical Storm Fay, definitely the outer bands of that system. And this graphic shows you the radar estimate of rainfall. You can see some of the yellows there. That corresponds to well over 2-3 inches of rain. And the good news is it continues to move on towards areas that need it, especially Lake Okeechobee. That's the reservoir that kind of supplements drinking water for South Florida. That's some good news. Again, the radar also includes our tornado watch until 8 a.m. Anytime you have a hurricane or a tropical storm or a tropical system make landfall or get close to land, you have the risk of tornadoes spinning up pretty quickly. So don't expect a lot of lead time in these. The good news is we're not expecting EF4 or EF5 tornadoes, but definitely EF0s, EF1s, maybe even EF2 tornadoes quickly spinning up with little or no advanced warning. But this system continues to move on towards parts of Florida. And Florida, man, have we had just a raw deal so far in the past 5 years. We're talking a dirty dozen of names, and some of these notorious. Even Katrina, Wilma. Yeah, Katrina hit Florida first, then strengthened into the Gulf of Mexico before it hit the Gulf Coast. Wilma, we all remember Wilma if you live in the Miami area. We know that all too well. And now Fay. Fay is this line right there. That's the 12th in the last 5 years. The question is, where will it continue to go? Well, as you take a look at the time.
By like 20 or 30 miles, and there is some semblance of an eye wall trying to form, where you're looking at some deep convection sort of rotating around in a semblance of what is trying to become an eye wall, but certainly not there at this point. This thunderstorm cell here, even when you look at it actually in a more high-resolution radar, there was a band forming well to the north, and this other storm rotated around that central circulation there. But right in this area here, off to the southwest of Marco, that is not very far, what, maybe 30 miles, something like that. Anyhow, these rain squalls, these rain bands moving in across Collier County, right up to around Naples. You have heavy rain across Collier County, much of Monroe, Miami-Dade, and as Sharon was pointing out, Palm Beach County, yeah, you've had some power outages due to the reports of tornadoes earlier. Hey, let's keep going here. Projected path.
With the latest, Richard.
Christine and Diana, Fay didn't leave behind any devastating damage, but the heavy rains led to one amazing rescue on the island. One by one, they're brought back onto dry land. The dramatic rescue playing out along the northwestern part of the island. Cuban rescue teams using a small boat and a rope to help rescue residents in one neighborhood that was nearly swept away by rising floodwaters.
In just under 3 hours, and something we've never seen before, rivers began to overflow their banks.
Residents in need of help after roads covered in knee-deep water made it nearly impossible to cross. Teams working together, carrying the elderly and children to higher ground before being taken to local shelters. In all, 35 people were rescued.
Everyone did an excellent job, and there's no danger. Everything is under control.
Portions of southeastern Cuba, especially coastal areas, the hardest hit. Fay's winds and rain taking its toll on homes, leaving crucial livestock to fend for themselves. Cuban authorities evacuated nearly 10,000 residents in low-lying areas.
There were homes that the storm simply washed away, but we completed our rescue mission.
State-run television reported little damage, with most of the evacuees allowed to return to their homes today.
There is calm in our neighborhoods. There is security. All steps have been taken to prevent the loss of life.
Well, no deaths were reported on the island, but elsewhere in the Caribbean, the number of dead now stands at 14 after two babies in Haiti were killed when an overcrowded bus, that is, flipped over trying to cross a wet road. That's the latest in the Plex. Richard Lemus today in Florida.
We've seen in South Florida are probably headed this way as long as they don't fall apart, but right now they're looking mighty healthy. Here, clearly you can see the center located there on the west coast now. There is Alligator Alley, I-75, the center of Fay, just about to cross I-75 to the east of the Golden Gate there, and Naples. And you can see these bands rotating quickly out away from it. Now, we've had some of these bands a little bit on the tornadic side. Let's do some distance calculations here just to get an idea. Everything's moving so fast, but this big band, there is Chrome Avenue, and that big band is about 22 miles to the west of Chrome Avenue and moving east at about 35, so it's less than an hour away. Here we are in Miami-Dade County. You have some of the heavier storms moving through there, and the big band is about 17 miles west of Chrome Avenue there, so that gives you an idea about a half hour away. If we go from the turnpike out to that big band, it is a little more than, say, 20 miles away from there. So certainly some considerations as we look at all of this through the morning here. And let me zoom back out to a wider view, and you can see that this is something we're going to have to be dealing with this morning, these rotating bands coming through. What you can expect with these bands: torrential rainfall, very low, near zero visibility, and very strong and gusty winds, possibly 50 to 60 miles an hour. So something we should be preparing for here in the next hour. It's not going to be an all-day rain, but it's going to be these squalls coming through, and this one coming on the way, it looks like kind of a doozy. Here is the radar satellite starting yesterday morning. You can see it right there, and the current advisory is at 5 a.m., 25.9 north, 81.7 west, 60-mile-an-hour winds, moving to the north-northeast at 9 and 989 millibars. That pressure was falling quickly. It's a good thing Fay is getting over land, because Fay was headed to being a hurricane because of all the strengthening that was going on. It's forecast to move today to the northeast, so midday today, right around Lake Okeechobee area, and that would be good news for the lake. But we're still in the circulation because it's a fairly big circulation.
Fay sweeps ashore weaker than expected, but no less dangerous. Just minutes ago, we got this video of possible tornado damage in Wellington, Florida. That's in Palm Beach County. Several homes are reported damaged, but no injuries at this point. Before dawn this morning, Fay made landfall as a tropical storm on Florida's southwest coast. Its winds far short of the hurricane strength that had been feared, but it does remain a major concern. In addition to the threat of tornadoes, Fay could also dump as much as 10 inches of rain on the Florida peninsula. Let's get the very latest on Fay now and where it's headed. CNN meteorologist Reynolds Wolf is in the Extreme Weather Center. So what's the word here, Reynolds? Where is it headed?
Okay, we're going to show you what's happening now, where it's headed, then we're going to show you some cool things with the radar. How about that?
Okay,
Does
good.
that work for you? All right,
Yeah.
let's start off with this. Heidi, Fay currently about 29 miles from Fort Myers, Florida, but that is the center we're talking about. I mean, clearly, this thing is hundreds of miles wide, crossing the Sunshine State, which is not very sunny right now. It winds, again, as I mentioned, 60 at 70, gusts at 60, or rather at 70, winds at 60, sustained, moving to the north-northeast at 9 miles per hour. This thing is crawling. I mean, just very, very slow moving storm. And with the storm moving very slowly, there's that possibility of seeing some flooding in parts of Central Florida, North Florida. The storm expected to veer its way just off the coast as we get into Thursday, then possibly making another landfall just north of Jacksonville near Mayport, right along the I-10 corridor for the next, let's see, Saturday, then into Sunday, and possibly a heavy rainmaker. We're going to switch gears a little bit and let you see this radar. It shows you just the structure of the storm system. We're actually going to tilt this back on this level, too, show you some of the highest cloud tops going up to 50,000 feet. And you can see, again, looks pretty impressive here. Some of the heavier rainfall you'll notice just north of Fort Myers. This is the western half. This is your northern quadrant over here. Again, this is just obscured. If you were to look at this on satellite, have a lot of clouds running over the top, but this radar image gives you an idea of just the intensity of some of the rainfall, the yellows you see where it's heaviest, and of course, you can see just how it builds up. The convergence aloft, rather at the surface, and the divergence aloft, just a beautiful structure of this storm. So let's send it back to you. Thankfully, though, it's not going to be much of an issue in terms of wind. The wind will die down, but we still have that threat, remember, of the possibility of some flooding in many locations, and we could have some tornadoes spin off. So got to be very careful over the next couple of hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And love the computer models there. Thank you.
And welcome back, everyone. It's 10 till the hour, time for our tropical update. And we'll get to the eastern Atlantic in just a second. We want to update you on Tropical Storm Fay. A couple stories with this. Even though it's made landfall, it is still an entity we're dealing with here just west of Lake Okeechobee. Flooding and tornadoes are the story with this, at least right now. So here are the very latest. This is the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Winds at 60. It hasn't changed. The pressure's actually dropped 2 millibars. How do you like that? Over land, but it is forecast to weaken as it sits over land and loses that energy here from the water. So we're going to watch this move towards the north-northeast. Right now it's moving very slowly at 9 miles per hour. It actually is going to slow down even more. So that's why flooding is going to be a concern with this. And that's the Latin long if you're following along here. Now, the good news is on this new advisory, they've discontinued a tropical storm warnings here for the west coast of Florida all the way to the Keys southwest of Ocean Reef, and Florida Bay has been discontinued. And the tropical storm watches here for the Bahamas have been discontinued too. Still under those warnings though for the East Coast. That's where some of the strongest winds are, the strongest bands that are rotating around this. So here it is on our visible. This is a cool picture, isn't it? And you can still see a really decent circulation with this, and still that center still intact. And a threat for tornadoes still with us too. So that's another story with this. And as you get later in the day, Orlando will get some of the heavy rains out of this too. Now there's that tornado watch until 4 o'clock this afternoon, and it will be extended, especially northward, and even for central Florida, maybe even later today, as this slowly works northward. And where you see some of those yellows and reds, that's where we're getting some of the very heavy rainfall amounts. Now, earlier we had a tornado reported in Palm Beach County. That was early this morning. We've had warnings off and on with this area right here, this line, this band right here. And some of these storms just east of Miami look pretty wicked. Thank goodness they're offshore at this point. But really around that center, we can still get tropical storm gusts with this. So power outages are still possible. Okay, and still seeing these sustained winds up to 30 miles an hour around this with higher gusts than this. We've already had what earlier in the Keys of wind over 70 miles per hour as it moved by. So very heavy rain. Boy, it's a washout, folks.
La imagen de radar que muestra bastante claro la ubicación actual del sistema. Está más o menos sobre este sector, el punto central, el de mínima presión de este sistema tropical, con numerosa precipitación sobre esta área, moviéndose en esa dirección. Toda esta lluvia, reitero, se dirige hacia el lago Okeechobee, lo cual va a ser un balance sumamente positivo asociado a Fay a su paso por el sur de Florida. En cuanto a nuestra ciudad, hay puntos en que todavía ven lluvia bastante fuerte, como sectores de Broward y Palm Beach, y más al sur Miami-Dade, ya debe ser un poquito más claro o quiebres importantes de la precipitación a esta hora de la mañana. ¿Dónde está el sistema específicamente? La posición, la intensidad, lo vamos a ver ahora. El viento no ha disminuido, se ha mantenido bastante organizado a pesar de que está en tierra firme. Este ciclón se mantiene todavía en torno a 60 millas por hora, de ahí la peligrosidad todavía de esta tormenta tropical Fay a su paso por el sur de Florida. La presión sigue bastante baja, en torno a 986 milibares, y se dirige al nor-noreste a 9 millas por hora. No va tan rápido, así que la precipitación va a ser intensa en gran parte de la zona porque se va a mover muy poco. En otras palabras, la nubosidad va a estar dejando lluvia durante mucho tiempo en un mismo punto, y de ahí entonces la peligrosidad de que los acumulados sean tan grandes asociados al paso de Fay sobre el área. ¿Por qué se espera que siga dejando lluvia a pesar de que se aleje? Porque tenemos una baja presión sobre esta zona y por supuesto hay una banda de alimentación de humedad desde el sur. Esa banda de alimentación, que es como un callejón por donde pasa la humedad, justamente va a estar ubicado en el sur de Florida, con lo cual podremos seguir viendo precipitación, como les comentaba, esta noche, todavía mañana e incluso pasado mañana, producto del alejamiento de Fay un poco más hacia el norte. Llegó como tormenta tropical, fuimos afortunados, no llegó como huracán, el viento no ha sido tan intenso, no despreciable, pero no tan fuerte, las ráfagas máximas han llegado a 40, 45, no mucho más allá acá en la ciudad, pero sí hemos visto mucha precipitación y lo más complejo es que lo vamos a seguir viendo durante las próximas horas. Se está levantando más al norte Fay, se está dirigiendo
10 minutes till the hour here on the Weather Channel, I guess everywhere. You're watching the Weather Channel, and this is the Tropical Update. It's 10 minutes till the hour, and we're going to talk about what's happening with Tropical Storm Fay. And it made landfall early this morning, the second landfall at 5 a.m. And right now, the center very close to Lake Okeechobee at this time. The movement towards north-northeast at 8 miles per hour, winds at 65 miles per hour. That has come up a little bit. That's because we actually just right on that eastern wall of the center, there have been some winds gusting over 60 miles per hour. So as you can see on our infrared satellite picture, though, what's deceiving is that the cloud top's actually warming. We've seen a decrease in that deep convection around the center. So we're going to watch this move slowly to the north-northeast. Couple threats from this still, even though it's over land, flooding, tornadoes. And of course, we have the threat maybe some power outages too coming in with that too. Tropical storm warnings up from Ocean Reef all the way to Flagler Beach, which means we're still under that threat of tropical storm winds, force winds here, and we've seen some pretty strong wind gusts here along the East Coast. And this tropical storm watches from Flagler Beach all the way to the Georgia coast.
Expecting here in Florida, you know, we're still dealing with Fay, which is an incredibly intense storm still, packing winds around 65 miles per hour. And look at that, you can just see the center of circulation. It looks like an eye of a hurricane, doesn't it?
Well, we are expecting some gradual weakening to take place, but flooding, water everywhere is going to be our primary threat. Still some tornadoes possible, and there you can see we have a warning for Indian River County. There you can see those lines continue to feed on in. Here's Moorhaven. We're about 20 miles to the north of there now, where the center is, about Lakeport, Florida, if you know where that is. But you can expect to see wind gusts a good 50, 60 miles per hour yet. Check out, this is updated, guys, since I saw
in a snapshot the overall cloud coverage, and you can pretty much see that the center of circulation is moving right in this general area, about 90 miles to the northwest of Miami and a good 90 miles to the southeast of Tampa. So it's right in the center of Tampa and Miami, but this center of circulation is moving off to the northeast, as mentioned, at some 8 miles an hour. So it's moving at a pretty good clip, and along with it, we've had very, very heavy rains. As you could see, these bands just being pulled around the center of circulation. This is a close-up view of the center of circulation, again moving right across the central parts of the southern peninsula. So a broader perspective again, and we'll tell you that the center of circulation is moving off in this direction, but you could see some of those broader bands just being circulated around the center, and some of these heavier squall bands have
at this hour now not really moving at all. And even though the forecast does call for it to go back in the Atlantic Ocean, make a big left-hand turn and maybe hit Jacksonville, I'm thinking it could do anything at this point in time. When a storm literally stalls, when it doesn't move at all, it could go left, right, north, south. It could do anything it wants to. The biggest threat today is going to be the onshore chance of tornadoes and, of course, the flooding. Some spots could have picked up 15 inches of rain already. There's the official track. It could hit Orlando and just go left. We'll see.
Dumping plenty of rain just north of Lake Okeechobee. The question now, where will the storm go next? And after interrupting the first 2 days of the school year, what is the forecast after all this as South Florida children finally head off to school in the morning?
Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Trent Eric with the latest on Tropical Storm Fay and the first day of school forecast. Trent, are the kids going to need rain gear in the morning? That's the question.
Well, I know, you know what, they need to pack it with them, because if they don't need it in the morning, they may need it in the afternoon as they have the ride home from school on the school bus. Looking at the radar satellite composite, the storm is still well to our north. Some rain bands still moving across South Florida, and that's what we may see early in the morning. It's going to be a little breezy at times, a warm start. Temperatures will be in the upper 70s, but as Fay continues to pull away from us, we're going to be in a southwesterly flow across the state, and that could allow for a few showers and thunderstorms to develop in the afternoon hours as well. The bulk of the rain from Lake Okeechobee all the way up towards Cape Canaveral here tonight, as the center of circulation is getting closer to exiting the central parts of the state. But as far as Miami-Dade and Broward County right now, we are dry, and I think we'll anticipate that for much of the night. And looking in the Florida Keys, this is where we've seen persistent showers moving from west to east across the Overseas Highway, anywhere from the 7-mile bridge to Marathon.
Still, the storm knocked down this large ficus tree in Miami Shores. The tree was and in Kendall, this Royal Poinciana came down in phase winds. It was rotten on the inside, and by all accounts, ready to fall anyway. Also, there was plenty of damage in Broward County and Fort Lauderdale. Whipping winds knocked down this tree. You can see the tree splintered and fell right onto the roadway at Southeast 3rd Avenue. Tough luck for a homeowner in Hallandale Beach. He just repaired his pool screen from Hurricane Wilma, and now it's down again. The homeowner claims that a tornado went through his house, but the National Weather Service has not yet confirmed that.
To Plantation now, where the storm knocked down a power line on the 7100 block of busy West Broward Boulevard in Plantation. FP&L crews were out there quickly to repair that line. And speaking of FP&L, crews are out tonight, of course, working on all those power outages across both Miami-Dade and Broward counties. In Miami-Dade, 2,100 customers are still without power, unfortunately. That number is down to 1,700 in Broward. Crews hope to have power fully restored by tomorrow. In Monroe County, they had 100% power by last night.
Well, Tropical Storm Fay gave kids in South Florida.
Explain that to us, Lisette.
Well, basically what happened, Cynthia, Jim, is that Fay made its first landfall around Key West, then made its second landfall yesterday right around the southwest coast. And as you can see, it's now moved towards the east central coast, expected to emerge possibly into the Atlantic, but right now it's riding somewhat along the coast northward. So it could turn towards the northwest, at least that's what the Hurricane Center is expecting, and then take a more westward track and could be impacting the northern Florida area. So let's show you the 5 a.m. advisory, because the wind speeds right now about 50 miles per hour. It's moving slowly towards the north at about 5 miles per hour. It's near Melbourne, Florida. At least that's where that low-level circulation was at. And in terms of the forecast track, well, you can see that it's expected to move somewhat to the northwest, then towards the west. So it could be impacting the Big Bend and the peninsula and the northern part of the peninsula, or even Georgia and the southeast, which right now is experiencing a drought. So this could bring beneficial rain.
The latest advisory at 8 o'clock, winds for Tropical Storm Fay sustained at 45 miles per hour, pressure 994 millibars. As this continues to rise, this tropical storm will start to weaken. You can already see the winds have dropped now to 45 miles per hour. It's moving to the north at 5 miles per hour, and it is very near Cape Canaveral. As we look at the latest satellite imagery, you can see still that counterclockwise flow, and most of that moisture really dragging up here in South Florida. Now, this won't be a concern for us anymore in South Florida unless you're traveling up to the north, so just be careful if you do that. Let's look at the rest of the tropics. I am watching an area to be concerned about a 50% chance of shower activity as of now, with the National Hurricane Center saying it could possibly become the next tropical depression. So they sent out a computer model, not to scare us, but just to let us know what's going on. It will be traveling just from the east to the west, closer to the Lesser Antilles within the next several days. So we'll be watching that.
Bueno, la tormenta tropical Fay sigue dejando lluvias torrenciales sobre zonas a lo largo de la costa en el noreste del estado de la Florida. Para saber lo último sobre este fenómeno, pasamos en vivo al Centro Nacional de Huracanes con el meteorólogo Lixion Ávila. Buenos días, Lixion. ¿Cómo estás?
Bien.
¿Dónde está Fay, Lixion, y qué se puede esperar de su futura trayectoria y de su fuerza?
En estos momentos el centro está sobre Cabo Cañaveral y nosotros pensamos que pueda salir por unas horas al mar, pero como se ha estado moviendo más sobre tierra que lo que pensábamos, no se ha intensificado. Afortunadamente, los vientos serán ahora de unos 45 millas por hora.
Has dado precisamente de lo que iba a preguntarte ahora, algo que le ha llamado mucho la atención a las personas que siguen este tipo de fenómeno, es que tradicionalmente cuando los fenómenos van a las aguas calientes, pues ganan fuerza, y cuando pasan sobre tierra se debilitan, pero parece que Fay de alguna manera desafió esas expectativas y ganó fuerza en algún momento cuando estuvo por la Florida en tierra ya. ¿Por qué?
Efectivamente, bueno, acuérdate bien que la Florida es una zona donde están los Everglades, donde hay mucha zona pantanosa y es similar, son algunas veces similar al mar, pero sin embargo ya ocurrió lo que tenía que ocurrir, se debilitó al moverse sobre tierra y como ha disminuido su velocidad de traslación, vemos que está un poco más débil. Todo depende si sale un poco más al mar, que pueda ganar un poco más de fuerza, pero está pareciendo como que no va a ganar mucho más.
Lixion, las posibilidades de lo que también se ha estado comentando sobre una especie de efecto boomerang, en el que el huracán salga y de alguna manera pueda volver, ganar fuerza allá y regresar a la Florida.
Sí, eso existe todavía. Si él sale por la zona del mar ahí a la costa este de la Florida, al este de Daytona, las condiciones son favorables para que regrese de nuevo sobre tierra. Lo más difícil es la intensidad. De que va a regresar a tierra es casi, le puedo decir que es bastante seguro. Lo que no sabemos es cuánta intensidad va a tener, pero mientras más tiempo continúe sobre tierra como está, menos se va a intensificar.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias a Lixion Ávila, como siempre, por darnos esa importante información. Y me imagino que hay que seguir viéndolo muy de cerca, ¿no, Lixion? No vamos a bajar la guardia.
No, para nada. Además, estamos en agosto, es el principio.
Claro que sí.
Had to be mobilized, all as the Treasure Coast remains underwater long after Fay has moved on. Hundreds of homes and roads in parts of Martin, St. Lucie, and Indian River counties to our north flooded by the slow-churning tropical storm. In St. Lucie County alone, 10 inches of rain fell yesterday, leaving 30% of roads flooded, and officials there urging residents to stay home. It's much of the same near Orlando tonight. Flash floods, several twisters, as well as one death reported as Fay pays Central Florida a much-dreaded visit. Slow and soggy Fay making for a miserable Wednesday in Central Florida. The tropical storm soaking Cape Canaveral, dropping 6 to 10 inches of rain so far along the Brevard County coast, causing flash floods in some areas. One resident waking up to find fish swimming in her driveway.
We thought it was going to be just a light storm, and now it turns out to be this.
Forecasters at the National Hurricane Center say its winds have decreased now to 45 miles per hour, but could regain strength as it moves inland again.
This is a unique situation. We normally see tropical storms and hurricanes decrease in intensity once they make landfall.
Fay has spawned at least 7 twisters so far.
I felt like I was in a twist movie, a horror movie.
The worst of the damage statewide caused by a tornado southeast of Orlando hitting about 50 homes.
Everything was shaking. The house, the light went, the window was shaking, everything.
This loud noise came, and all of a sudden the roof just came off and flying glass, and everything just started flying around, and everything just went.
And her Florida visit far from over.
Fay is still a threat to the north and the panhandle, especially for flooding.
Now, without question, it's Lake Okeechobee that's benefited the most from Fay's visit. Between the rain dumped directly on it and storm runoff, Fay could end up raising the big lake by, get this, more than a foot or more. Live in the Plex tonight, Diane Fernandez, 7 News.
All right, Diane, back home, remnants of Fay remain mostly in the form of showers, here and there.
Yeah, meteorologist Brent Cameron is living in the Weather Center. He's got some details for us. Brent?
Charles, Fay is actually about 200 miles away from Miami. That is the location of the latest center as dictated here, but we're still seeing this system pull in lots of tropical moisture in from the Gulf of Mexico, in fact, into South Florida, west to east, moving showers, at times some heavy downpours on this, the first day of school for a lot of folks. And then we go up the coast, and there you see the heaviest, most significant showers closer to the center, especially south. By the way, that center of circulation very close to Cape Canaveral right now, and at least a partial area of the circulation back over water. It is expected to head back into the land vicinity, but the main story here is the fact that more flooding rains will be possible near the center of circulation. In fact, several dozen miles away from the center, and that is going to be the story for the next 24 hours or more. Here's what's going on. It's stalled out, moving to the north, but at a slow drift, less than even 1 mile per hour, and the top winds sustained at about 50. Good news, as Diane mentioned just a bit ago, Diana, and we do have a drought buster situation across all of the Florida peninsula.
Right on the coast, it barely moved offshore, and it will gradually come in. You can see with the red shaded colors here, very high cold cloud tops. So there's still some really heavy rain to come down, some gusty winds primarily.
Strong winds, thankfully, staying offshore across the Atlantic waters, but onshore, really running from Jacksonville all the way down towards Tampa and even the I-4 corridor. A lot of rain over the course of the last few days. Yesterday alone, many locations between 10 to nearly 12 inches of rain. And up towards Daytona Beach now this morning, we'll see extending from Daytona up to Jacksonville and then eventually spreading off towards the Panhandle through tomorrow. 5 to 10 inches of rain, no problem. Very easy to accomplish. So what a system this has been. 60-mile-per-hour winds, as I said, and the big problem here, it's stationary. Because it's not moving, it just sits there and keeps putting the rains down. That will keep occurring over the course of the next 24 to 48 hours.
Satellite picture, the enhanced picture shows our taller tops, the colder tops getting up into southeastern Georgia. So Glynn County getting rained on pretty good too. Rainfall rates here could be approaching 1 inch per hour. Then there's a feeder tail down here over Collier County and Lee County in Florida. That as well, putting down some locally very heavy rain. Let's show you what's going on here. Kind of overlay the winds here. You can see more of a north wind blowing over the Tallahassee area, turning more northwesterly in Tampa. Then we have a southwesterly flow here around Melbourne. It's still raining around Melbourne in some cases, but nothing like it had been. Just an amazing rain event there in Brevard County, picking up upwards of 26 inches of rain. Cape Canaveral's gotten clocked as well. Cocoa Beach, the airport there, picking up over 20 inches. The good news is we're enveloping a broader, drier pattern here around that center. So this whole area from New Smyrna Beach to Daytona Beach to Flagler Beach, even up near Mike Saddell there in St. Augustine, that air is slowly drying out, at least temporarily. But right up above where Mike is there, Ponte Vedra Beach, and down here over the Ocala National Forest, very heavy rainfall. Rainfall rates here could be over 1 inch per hour. Also, rainfall rates of 1 to 2 inches per hour here in southern areas of Lee County and Collier County. So Naples and Marco Island just getting hammered yet again. And
11 a.m. advisory for Tropical Storm Fay. The wind still at 60 miles an hour. And yes, if you can believe it or not, still stationary, barely moving 15 miles east-northeast of Daytona Beach, Florida. And boy, folks up to our north around central Florida and northern Florida really getting hit hard with heavy rain. This could lead to catastrophic flooding, already dealing with a very serious flooding situation. Now you can see it's going to continue to track towards the west-northwest. The future track indicating there's a big cone of uncertainty in terms of where it's going to be headed, but it could be affecting the southeastern states, which right now they're in a serious drought, so they need the rain, and then it'll continue to move towards the west or the northwest. So continue to track Tropical Storm for you. Here is Fay. You can see all that moisture wrapping around, really impacting Jacksonville at this time, and also Daytona Beach and Melbourne. They've received about 15 inches of rain, and that rain is going to continue to fall throughout the day today as Fay is barely moving. In the meantime, we're watching two other areas in the tropics. This one is about 1,000 miles to the east of the Lesser Antilles. A lot of shower and thunderstorm activity, but low potential for development. But behind that, we're going to keep a close eye on that big blow-up of convection, that wave that's spinning off the coast of Africa. In the meantime, we continue to...
And officially, we've had reports of over 20 inches of rain associated with Fay so far.
That's right, and that's going to be the big story the next 24 to 36 hours in North Florida. Another foot of rain possible in some areas. Not in the same ones that got 30 inches, but it's still going to be the main impact. Now we're looking at the observations and we see this large, roughly 60 to 80 mile wide circulation center, and within it there's a smaller little circulation that I end up with right where I have the symbol, and it's very close to St. Augustine Beach, where the observation there has gone down from 30 miles an hour to 1 knot. That's about 1.5 miles per hour, so it's almost gone calm there. But I think the center's coming onshore somewhere near basically the Marine Land St. Augustine area. We'll get official landfall from the Hurricane Center coming up. But the bottom line, don't pay attention to this tiny area. North of it is where the onshore flow is coming on, and notice heavy rain, and some of that rain is way down in South Florida as well. But the accumulations of the heaviest rain we expect over North Florida the next 24 hours and into South Georgia as well. And some of that is already up towards Savannah and moving even north of that. All right, here's the circulation center from the satellite imagery. So far, the winds have not all been that strong over land, other than in some gusts. Some of the stronger winds are back offshore, and when the circulation center comes on, that's where we expect the potential for some power outages, primarily on the onshore flow, where it's coming on north of the circulation center. But anywhere we have some strong rain areas, we could see some power outages isolated across the northern part of the state the next 6 to 12 hours. Now here's the...
Plenty of moisture, and this is still very unstable, so as it's moving from coast to coast, we will see another day of heavy rain and gusty winds to our friends up in the northern part of Florida. Not that they need it, but as it continues more to the west, the system will then approach the Gulf of Mexico and then hit the Panhandle as it continues all the way towards Louisiana. So we will be watching this. This will be a story throughout the weekend, but as we head into the weekend, it will have less of an impact on our weather pattern because our sea breeze will actually start to kick in.
And Bruce out there, live coverage continues in St. Augustine Beach. Mike, are you, I don't see you very protected out there. What's that, a big boat behind you? Is that a live, oh, it's a live truck, never mind.
Well, obviously you need to return to TV 101. That's our live truck. I wanted to show everybody at home how we get the picture out. Obviously the live truck, but we've got it placed over there behind that two-story building, and that protects the dish from bouncing around. What happened earlier, I think, was we had some rain fade. It's raining so hard between here and the satellite. We got to get the picture up and then back to Atlanta. So there you go. Look at the palm trees down on A1A. Boy, they are just being whipped by these wind gusts between 50 and 60 miles an hour. Let's go to our Titan radar right now. Give you an idea of what we're in. We've been in this band all morning. Man, it is just one of those mornings out here on the beach in St. Augustine. We've had wind gusts down the coast at Palm Coast to 66 miles an hour, and some of these gusts here have been up around 60 miles an hour. Heavy rains wrapping in from the band right up this coastline, Daytona, Flagler, all the way up into Jacksonville, where we've got a new flash flood warning for parts of central Duval County until 1:30. All this rain is beginning to take its toll. We didn't get the rainfall like Melbourne did, but now we're getting totals that are going to end up in double digits, at least low double digits, in this part of the state. The tide, we've been talking about this. The tide is coming in, and I want to show you, oh gee, what's going on. High tide is now about 2 hours away. The water is getting close to where it's been for the past several high tides, eating away at the beaches. But notice it's a southeast wind. This is blowing the water up the coast from the south up to the north. Now the past couple days the winds have been from the northeast. and that's more of an eroding wind. Hey, look what's blowing down the beach here. Somebody must have gotten an oil change just in time for Fay. In the meantime, the forecast, it's more the same for the next few hours at least here with this band. If you're watching us from the Daytona area, right up to Jacksonville, even up to Brunswick, Georgia, where we had a wind gust you just saw 49 miles an hour. Heavy rain, wind, street flooding. Best bet is to sit tight, stay home. So far, right here, the power is still on. It is going to get better by tomorrow as the winds back off and we get more of a scattered shower and thunderstorm situation, but still those bands wrapping around Tropical Storm Fay. Kelly, we think we're going to be in this for at least several more hours, and that's why these rainfall totals are going to be in the double digits before this storm moves out. And it's all heading towards the Panhandle, impacts there, and Jim Cantori live from there later on tonight.
All right, Mike, we appreciate the double duty you're doing out there, not just covering the storm for us, but maybe picking up some of the trash along the beach. Make sure you...
is, and slowly pushing to the west, you can see those outer rain bands all the way down in South Dade. And so as this storm pushes to the west, the rain should slowly start to head out of the area, but we will still be dealing with this for the next day or so at least. Now the lake getting much needed rainfall. We're going to talk about those rainfall amounts coming up in just a little bit. But right now the maximum winds about 45 miles per hour. So still a tropical storm. We'll have the track coming up in your full forecast. Also remember, log on to NBC.
Again, a huge rainmaker. I'm Dave Schwartz.
And I'm Ebony Dion. Along with the downpours, we're also watching a tornado threat this afternoon with Fay. And our watch should be expiring pretty soon, but still you can see that area that has been under the threat of tornadoes here into northern Florida and southern Georgia. But it is set to expire at 3 p.m. So we should see that maybe certainly expiring, but still the heavy rain remains up here, and we still do have a tropical storm. We are dealing with Fay with those winds sustained at 45 miles per hour, so it is a very slow-moving system, and it continues to bring the heavy rainfall to the area, but we're also seeing the clouds up towards the Atlanta area, and boy, we're just hoping and wishing for some of that wet weather. Now Dave has more.
And I'll tell you, we've been living with this one for almost a week. We take a look back a week, and we found that Fay was here, right over the Dominican Republic, and it just moves slowly but surely. Now, the slow pace of it is keeping it one wet storm. The center of the circulation now out over the Florida Panhandle, and the heaviest rain where you see orange. Here on our infrared satellite image, or green on the radar, or yellow make that. Let's get a little bit closer and see what we got going in here. You know, last week, Melbourne, Florida picked up 22 inches, 26 inches on the west side of town. The same thing's going on here. Here's our center of circulation. It's a pretty quiet day at Panama City today. Windy, northerly winds here in Pensacola, but southerly winds in here, southeasterly winds in here, and where you see yellow and red, the rain is coming down at rates up to 4 inches per hour. The
surface observations in the position of the low pressure center. We see it's north of Mobile, Alabama, right there, spinning around. The winds over land are not all that strong, although they're still gusty in the rain showers, which are mostly to the north of the circulation. Some bands coming up into Georgia, and there's still a tornado threat in the northeast quadrant of the circulation up here for the next probably 8 or 10 hours or so. In the meantime, down in the marine environment down here, the winds are fairly light. Wave action is not that bad. A little elevated rip current threat in the western portions of the Panhandle out toward Pensacola and Orange Beach today, so watch out for that. Why is it going to linger around for a couple of days? Let's go upstairs to the upper atmosphere and look. It's tangled up with an upper-level low-pressure center with a little ridge of high pressure blocking it to the north, so it's going to meander around, could actually drop back into Louisiana briefly before it finally is caught by an upper trough and pulled off to the northeast. All right, now our attention goes back down into the deep tropics. We're looking at a low-pressure center that's moved through the Antilles. The upper winds here are fairly fast out of the southwest, so it's been held in check, but there's still a lot of rain action in there, and of course the Antilles got it last night. Low pressure center just to the west of Grenada here, moving to the west at about 15. So it's going to be improving weather in the Antilles, but there is some potential for this to develop, especially if these upper winds lift to the north. So we'll be watching this as it moves west-northwest at about 15 to 20 miles per hour. Okay, let's go way out into the eastern Atlantic. We have one low pressure out here. You can see it spinning around. One or 2 thunderstorms with it. No chance for development with that right now. There's another larger low pressure center out here, and look at observations over the African coast. Pressure's down to about 1,008 millibars, so this is a pretty potent low pressure center. We'll monitor this one as it has the potential to develop once it comes off the African coast. All right.